and has also carried out multiple data protection compliance audits for various clients spanning from different sectors, including but not limited to financial services, insurance, power, hospitality, oil and gas, banking, real estate. He has also advised a wide array of clients on various general legal and compliance issues in the corporate and commercial space, including but not limited to matters on private equity, capital reorganization, regulatory compliance, corporate governance, employment. He has also demonstrated history in company secretarial matters. Please welcome Owemedimo Atakpo as he takes on this panel session for today. Owem, over to you and welcome.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where we are calling from. Thank you so much, Amaka, for the introduction. All right. So, just quickly following Amaka's introduction, right, I will be proceeding to introduce members of our panel session for today. Right, we have a lot of interesting panelists actually for this session. Right, the first panelist we have is Susan Otiono. Susan is a data protection and privacy expert from Kenya. Right, Ms. Susan Otiono is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, an adaptable legal professional currently focusing on artificial intelligence and data protection. Ms. Otiono recently spoke at the Fakugesi Festival in Johannesburg on artificial intelligence for the common good, and her day-to-day activities include training various organizations on data protection and privacy, as well as collaborating with practitioners on research around artificial intelligence topics. Ms. Otiono has an affinity for languages and speaks French, English, Kiswahili, Luo, and some Japanese. A pleasure to have you, Ms. Otiono. If you could just give us a hi.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
All right. Next panelist is also legally inclined. His name is Oyeyemi Oke. He's the Executive Director, Tax Aid Technologies. Oyeyemi holds an EU GDPR certification and advises clients on compliance with the NDPR. Oyeyemi has advised a variety of clients on data protection in Nigeria and has been involved in over 50 data protection audits for clients in various sectors like financial services, fast-moving consumer goods, information technologies, and professional services. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you could just give us a hi.
Hi, Uwem. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Our next panelist is T. Senpa Addison. right? Also on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity expert all the way from Ghana. Thomas, as he's fondly called, is an accomplished digital technology consultant who serves as the founder and president of Data Today, a prominent technology consulting organization specializing in research solutions and training. With a wealth of experience collaborating with various brands and businesses, he possesses a deep understanding of the essential ingredients for success in the digital technology realm. He has a diverse project portfolio spanning agriculture, business development, education, engineering, fashion, and recycling. He has also established fruitful partnerships with enterprises across sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Thomas is a dedicated advocate for unlocking the potential of digital technology in the world of brands and businesses. His passion drives him to delve deep into the realms of cybersecurity and data privacy, where he diligently investigates the vulnerabilities that users of digital technologies may encounter, especially as Africans. Thomas firmly believes in the profound transformative capabilities of digital technology. He is not content with the surface level applications of technology, but is rather also committed to uncovering its hidden possibilities and safeguarding its responsible use. His unwavering dedication to the advancement of digital technology and its role in shaping a sustainable and secure future underscores his pivotal role in digital landscape. He is a strong proponent of leveraging concepts from the fourth industrial revolution to steer us closer to achieving sustainable development goals. That's quite the profile. Thank you so much for joining us today, Thomas. If you could give us a hi, just so we know that we are here.
Yeah, hello everyone.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us still. Last but not the least, we have Light Ihe Siolo. Pardon me if I murdered your name. Light is the CEO of Lognetics, taking the lead as the CEO of one of the fastest growing AI and technological brands in Africa, one that prides himself with creating groundbreaking innovations, is Light Ihe Siolo. Having mastered over multiple softwares, right, Light utilizes proven methods and strategies into providing brand solutions across multiple platforms, which have accounted for the success of many brands all over the world. Consequently, his passion and unrelenting drive to create disruptive systems that transcends artificial intelligence while incorporating virtual reality and holographic computation with laser-precise technological frameworks has led him into establishing Lognetics, the futuristic domain of creativity, which has a goal of transforming and revolutionizing approaches to technology and branding problems across industries. Thank you so much for joining us today, Light. You could just give us a hi.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, and thank you everyone for joining in this panel session. Specifically, the topic for our panel session today is cultural considerations in digital sovereignty. So, just by way of introduction, right? The sub-theme of cultural considerations in digital sovereignty and data protection is a profound exploration of the intersection between universal ethical AI standards and the rich tapestry of cultural values that define African societies while safeguarding data. This topic basically delves into the intricate balance required to ensure that ethical AI practices harmonize with and deeply respect local norms, traditions, values, all within the context of data protection. It is a multifaceted conversation that not only acknowledges the diversity of African cultures, but also recognizes the ethical imperatives that underpin data sovereignty and AI development while upholding data. Speaking on the diverse cultural landscape of Africa, Africa is a continent of immense cultural diversity, comprising a multitude of languages, traditions, belief systems, and social structures. The coexistence of this diversity creates a unique cultural milieu that demands nuanced considerations in the deployment of AI technologies while ensuring data protection. The recognition and appreciation of this diversity forms the foundation of any ethical AI practice within the continent. What are some of these universal AI standards in relation to data protection? So basically, universal ethical AI standards provide a set of principles that govern AI development. For those who don't know what AI is, I just want to clarify that AI is artificial intelligence. So, universal ethical AI standards provide a set of principles that govern AI development globally with a strong emphasis on fairness, transparency, accountability, and the protection of individual rights and privacy, which are all vital aspects of data protection. While all these principles are critical, they must be applied in a manner that respects and accommodates the diversity of cultural values in Africa. Now, going further to speak on balancing ethical imperatives, local norms, and data protection. The central challenge in the context of data sovereignty, AI development, and data protection lies in striking a balance between the ethical imperatives of AI, the local norms of African societies, and ensuring data protection. Basically, a balance of these three issues. This balance calls for the integration of universal ethical principles with an understanding of how they can be applied in ways that respect local customs and values while also upholding data protection. Engaging with local communities and stakeholders is fundamental to developing ethical AI solutions that align with cultural norms and ensure data protection. Co-creation involving representatives from diverse cultural backgrounds can also lead to AI systems that are more attuned to local values, customs, and data protection. Further, respecting individual privacy and consent also in the context of AI and data governance must be approached with an understanding of cultural norms, and it is pivotal to ensure data protection. And exploring how these principles align with diverse cultural perspectives is central to achieving ethical data sovereignty while upholding data protection. Basically, right, promoting education and awareness about the ethical use of AI within the context of diverse cultures is crucial for data protection. This education can empower individuals and communities to understand the ethical implications of AI and advocate for practices that respect their cultural values and data protection. Furthermore, cross-cultural collaboration in AI development, research, and policy making is an avenue for ensuring that ethical AI practices are sensitive to cultural values and data protection. Collaboration can further foster the exchange of insights and best practices for aligning AI with local norms while ensuring data protection. In conclusion, the theme of pardon me, please. The theme of cultural considerations in data sovereignty underscores the imperative of harmonizing universal ethical AI standards with rich cultural values which are inherent to the African societies while prioritizing data protection. This multifaceted conversation acknowledges the importance of cultural diversity and seeks ways in which ethical AI practices can align and deeply respect local norms, all within the framework of data protection. It is through the recognition of this diversity and the delicate balance between ethical imperatives, cultural considerations, and data protection that Africa can leverage on AI technologies while upholding data sovereignty, cultural heritage, and ensuring data protection. This dialogue between our panelists, right, and the audience paves the way for development of AI systems that are not only technologically advanced, but also deeply respectful of the cultures they serve, thereby advancing the cause of ethical data governance, AI development, and data protection in Nigeria. So basically, from this quick presentation, right, we are looking at AI development and data protection, all in connection to or in relation to the various, cultural diversity that applies in Nigeria. So, I mean, Africa is a country of more than 50 countries. It is a continent, pardon me, with more than 50 countries, each with their own unique cultures, right? So basically, our conversation today would be speaking to ethical AI standards, right? Which, of course, we know that the world is technologically advanced. I mean, day by day, we see new technologies are coming up. We've also seen the increased use of AI in our day-to-day activities, particularly in relation to technology, right? And a very fundamental aspect of the use of AI is the data protection concerns, right? So connecting all that, right, back to Africa and the cultural elements of each of our societies forms the basis of our conversation today. Right. So without much ado, I will just go forward, move forward into questions to our panelists. Thank you so much once again for joining us. I think my first question would most likely go to Thomas. Right. Hi, Thomas. Just confirming you can hear me, please.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much. All right. So my first question goes to you. Right. So speaking on universal ethical AI standards and data protection, how can universal ethical AI standards be integrated into AI practices to ensure data protection while respecting and aligning with diverse cultural norms that are found in Africa?
Okay, thank you for the question and good morning. Good morning to anybody watching or listening. Possibly good evening or good afternoon wherever you are, and thank you for joining again. So first off, in the context of Africa, like you rightly mentioned, I believe that the first thing to do is to acknowledge that we are different. In as much as we are on one continent, we are very different. Talk about the languages we speak. I'm sure this is the continent that has the most diverse languages possible, and so first of all, is acknowledging that we are very different. Once we acknowledge that we are different, then we can move on to the other issues. Because if you do not, you'll be assuming that you are the same, and then the solutions that you build, talking about the big tech solutions or maybe small businesses solutions that they build, they may build it to their specification based on what they are exposed to, not factoring in what may be the situation of others, and that can be one of the main issues that brings up challenges. And so it's important that we acknowledge that we are different. In as much as we are one people, we are very different. Then from there we move on to the other issues. Now we can look at it from the point where, after acknowledging that we are different, we come up with standards that cut across as much as possible. Because in the case of even Ghana, I'm Ghanaian. In the case of Ghana and Nigeria, we are similar, but we are also very different. And so once we understand that, we'll be able to create standards that do not infringe or limit people when they are using digital technology. Let's take the case of data protection, for example. I think it was this year that Nigeria as a country finally came up with an act. I mean, something that I'll call an act of a law basically for data protection that encompasses everything about the country. I think in the situation of Ghana, this was done sometime in, the last amendment was done sometime in 2012. Other African countries are, I think about 33 countries out of the 54 have legislation among data privacy. The rest are at various levels of implementing such collective, what I'll call laws to protect individuals. And so, if you are possibly, if there's a solution, and because you, let's say the service provider would say, okay, fine, an African country or a country does not have a data protection policy, and so they may want to just do anything. You understand that there may be problems. If you move to a country like, say, Ghana or Nigeria that now has, you realize that you are limited and you will not be able to take advantage. let's look at outside Africa. So I think about 5 or 6 years ago, that is when even the European Union came up with what they call the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. And this has seen multiple organizations, including the big ones like Google, Facebook, pay hefty fines on data privacy violations. This is because, I mean, one major issue I believe is because the solutions were built in America. They were built using American standards or with American people in mind. But then now it has a global reach, and then it's affecting people in Europe, and then they have to pay hefty fines. And so I believe initially they did not consider the differences and what may come up, and that's what resulted in these challenges. And so understanding the cultural context is very important. Now, maybe I want the other speakers to also come in, and then I'll come again. Then we can take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I think we would also like to hear contributions from other jurisdictions. I'm heading over to Kenya right now with Susan. So I don't know if you have any contributions in addition to what Thomas has said so far, Susan.
Uh, Thank you for the question, and I'm going to try not to butcher your name because I'm just getting familiar with like Nigerian names. I believe it's Uwe Medimo. I hope I'm saying
Yeah,
that.
Uwem is fine, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I want to echo a lot of what Thomas has said about differences. And it's true that the effects of digital technologies are not uniform. And so oversight of those effects cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. And so it's important to look at the unique differences. And Africa has peculiar and or particular differences when it comes to not just data protection, but also regulation of artificial intelligence, for example. And I think one of the most important things that we're seeing right now is how, data has become such a fundamental part of AI development. And so we're having these conversations around data sovereignty, data localization. How do we want to maneuver the African continental free trade area if we are adopting a, kind of data localization frameworks? And so it's a really interesting conversation and a really interesting time, specifically because we are also seeing that we are in Africa and in Kenya, we're not really represented in this data. And there's arguably this conversation around lack of structured data or data scarcity across the continent. However, there are opportunities to try and bridge this gap. I do think that AI technology, the application of AI technologies raises particular ethical concerns, particularly in the areas of privacy, transparency, and culture. And culture plays an important role in ethics because it is concerned with the social behavior of people in a specific area. And African countries, as you mentioned, are multilingual, have a diverse cultural background, and this directly impacts the adoption of technological innovation. I think for us, we are really trying to put our best foot forward in terms of how we deal with data and data protection. We are seeing our regulator, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, recently issuing penalties to various organizations for not complying with various consent management systems, or even simply not acquiring individuals' consent to post their picture on media. So you're seeing that the regulator is coming in to try and protect the rights of individuals, but there's still quite a bit of work to be done. For example, in the region, I think one of the highlights of the Ugandan Data Protection Act that I really hope we will kind of learn from is they've classified data privacy as a human right. And so you're seeing that they are setting a good tone in terms of good governance when it comes to data, and also maybe a regional example that we can follow when it comes to updating and amending our existing data protection frameworks. I will also mention that, this week we've seen a lot of advancement and or developments with regards to artificial intelligence and the safety and ethical aspects of that with the AI Safety Summit that's just concluded, the Bletchley Declaration that's been published, and ideally this is a good direction in terms of understanding the urgency of regulating artificial intelligence and also trying to anticipate the harms that are going to come. But the question still remains, where is Africa in this conversation? Because out of the 28 countries that are part of that agreement, only 2 countries are from Africa: Kenya, Rwanda, and Nigeria. So there's still some work to be done in terms of establishing ourselves in this conversation. And I'd say it would be about time for us to take a hard line in terms of how we want to regulate, not just in terms of data protection, but in terms of artificial intelligence and the type of approach that we're going to take. What are we regulating? Because we're mostly consumers and not builders of AI. How are we regulating it, and does it respond and address the unique issues in Africa? I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Susan. We'll just move forward to the next question, which is directed to Mr. Oke. Hi, Mr. Oke, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. All right, so my first question to you is, what are the key challenges and opportunities in achieving a balance between universal ethical AI principles, data protection, and the local norms and values of African societies?
Thanks for the question, UM. Before delving into the meat of the question, when I thought of this theme, what came to me is Africa is still grappling with understanding the Malabo Convention, and here we are faced with the issue of trying to deal with artificial intelligence. And as we know, the regulations and laws typically follow the market in terms of how the regulation typically plays catch up with the market to ensure that innovation is well regulated, in as much as it would also not stifle creativity. Now, if we bring that to the conversation on artificial intelligence, is arguable to say that Africa in the conversation on artificial intelligence is still at its infancy. Again, perhaps this may be because we are still trying to also set the relevant framework with regards to data protection and cybersecurity issues. And Thomas said something in his opening remarks that we are diverse as a continent, and this definitely would be a challenge with regards to the issues on artificial intelligence, and also balancing this with data protection and local norms and values in the African society. Now, in as much as the cultural diversity can pose a challenge, especially with regards to what I would call perhaps having unification of laws and regulations on artificial intelligence on the African continent, I also see that as an opportunity. And the opportunity would be that if a framework is to be developed on artificial intelligence, you would have a rich document or a rich framework, because it will consider different cultures, right? And the African culture, right, also has a lot of its foundation also in the concept of privacy, right? There are certain things you don't see outside in some cultures. There are certain actions you don't also take outside, and this actually has to do with the concept of privacy as well. So when technology on artificial intelligence is being developed, particularly perhaps outside Africa, these cultural nuances need to be considered. And for me, this also raises a challenge or poses a challenge to Africans as well, that we also need not to totally rely on perhaps what I would call artificial intelligence technology developed outside Africa. We also need to have homegrown artificial intelligence technology developed by ourselves, because we understand where the shoe pinches, and also we can also readily build in our norms, our values, right, into those technologies. So for me, it's also a wake-up call to us to ensure that we're able to develop homegrown artificial intelligence technology that would definitely take into account of our peculiarities as Africans. But be that as it may, looking at where we are as of today, another challenge would be the limited infrastructure that we have with regards to implementing robust data protection measures, right? And also ensuring adherence to ethical AI principles. Like I said, we still have the challenge of having homegrown artificial intelligence technology. And perhaps one of the problems we have as a continent is the limited infrastructure, and perhaps what I would call limited foundational basis from an educational perspective with regards to development of artificial intelligence. And obviously, when you talk about limited infrastructure, definitely you will be talking about limited to technological tools, the internet as well, and also things around limitations on digital literacy. But like I said, some of these challenges can actually turn or can actually be used or leveraged upon as advantages for us, right? In the area of innovation and customization, I think the diversity is a strength. We are able to, if we're able to harmonize or what I would say, leverage on the diversity, then we'll be able to develop customized technology for the African market. Definitely another advantage or opportunity will be economic development, right? If we're able to also have homegrown artificial intelligence technology, jobs will be created, empowerment will be there. Perhaps it would also reduce the African poverty index. And I'll close with this. What we should also bear in mind is that by the time we're able to leverage on these advantages, the conversations on sovereignty and ownership becomes easier, because if we are able to develop homegrown artificial intelligence technologies, definitely as a corollary to that, we would also want to ensure that we're keeping the data within the African market and not necessarily exporting same, thereby losing one, control, two, revenues for the market. But above all, right, this is my final closing. Above all, we should bear in mind that some of the drivers of some of these conversations would have to be based on having a good regulatory framework, a good policy framework that would spur innovation, that would also ensure that the required creativity to develop homegrown artificial intelligence technology is there. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Oke, for your contributions. That was a very, very apt response to this question. I mean, specifically touching on issues of regulation and challenges in terms of digital or in terms of technological developments and opportunities actually available to Africans. I think it would also be beneficial if we could hear, I mean, from the practical side of things. I would defer to Light, right, just to also further contribute to these particular questions. Hello, Light, can you hear me, please?
Hi, hello. Can you hear me
All
as
right.
well?
Yes, I can hear you, please. So, just in relation to, the same question that Mr. Oke just addressed, we would also like to hear your contributions as to the challenges and opportunities in achieving a balance between universal AI principles, data protection, and the local norms we have in Africa.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. From the trends right now in artificial intelligence, a lot of us have seen AI systems sprouting up from different parts of the world. Even Africa has also put in so much culture into building technological systems. And the truth is this, for any AI system to function effectively, there's something called data that these AI systems need to feed upon. And this data can be gotten from multiple sources. Now, the sources that most of these data are gotten from, most of the time when we are working on certain AI systems in our company, that's Lognetics, or maybe we're building on products for certain clients, and then we have to integrate certain APIs into some of those products that are being built. You get most of these data from different sources. And it always raises this issue of concerns. Do people that have access to the original data know that these data are used for certain purposes? And most of the ways that most of these data can be gotten are either through crowdsourcing, maybe either private collections where the AI or machine learning developers can get most of these data privately from different sources. Then also there's something called pre-cleaned and also pre-packaged data. There's another form of data collection that is called automated data collection. There's something called generative AI for most of us that know about generative AI and its strengths. Then there's another means of data collection, which is the RLHF means of collecting data, which involves reinforcement learning from human feedbacks. Now, if you notice that most of these data sources or means to collect most of these data are either authorized or some of them are to an extent unauthorized. And we are seeing most of those happening currently in Nigeria, where your data can be collected at random intervals from different by somebody. Like I think there was a time that someone called me and the person was like, hi, I got your number from so and so. I can't even relate. And it turned out to be that obviously it was a scam. If I wasn't a tech guy, maybe possibly all my accounts would have been wiped out. Now, where did the person get most of this information from? The person possibly got information from online platforms, right? Maybe where my contact information must have possibly been exposed to, or most of those. Now, we see certain level of illegal data collection processes in Nigeria or maybe in other countries. We can use a perfect example like loan apps. Most of us know loan apps, right? And you see the processes. I was reading a documentary of how most of these loan apps get some of their data and also how they're able to penetrate through your contacts and then send a lot of information to your contact, telling them that, hey, Light is a debtor. I'm just kidding. I'm not a debtor. Hey, so person is a debtor and he took our money and he has refused to return the money and all of those things. Now, how most of these, knowing that I'm actually a tech person and I've been in this field for a period of time, there are processes and there are protocols and systems that most of these organizations, like I'm using loan apps right now in context. Do you understand? There are a lot of other strategies, and along the line, I'll definitely give out some reviews. I think I'm revealing so much information already. So now, how most of these loan apps get most of these data is when you give them certain level of permission. They have access to your bank accounts. They can take out any amount of money that they possibly want to take out because you've given them access to certain things. They request for a code, and then all you're doing is that, okay, I'm currently broke and I need to solve this particular level of financial hardship. And then I'm providing these companies with so much information because I need their help, which is the money that they're revealing to me. But along the line, you realize that most of these data that are collected, most of them are collected through illegal means, where they have access to your bank information and they can wipe out your account at any point. Of course, there are protocols right now in Nigeria that most of these platforms cannot exceed normal norms. You see previously the trends. Most of you here, you must have seen, if you're in Nigeria, you must have seen them send a message to you and say, hey, so person is owing us money. Please, if you know him, kindly tell him to come and pay us or something. I don't know if you have seen that. You've seen possibly that. A lot of people are complaining. Now, how do they get access to your contacts? You didn't give them access to your contact, but you gave them access to certain level of information, which is what they use to get access to your contact. Now there are certain protocols. I'm actually very excited that most of this topic is brought in view to the general public, and there are protocols and there are processes that the government have to put in place. Private sectors also have to put into consideration before having access to certain level of data for most of these companies that feed on data on a daily basis. Now, bringing me to the first information that you spoke about, the first question, which is integrating universal ethical AI standards into AI practices in Africa. Now, we can achieve that while respecting cultural norms, right? And also this can be achieved through inclusive policy development. Now, basically that involves creating guidelines that consider the values and traditions of each community while also maintaining a strong foundation in universal ethical AI principles. Now, for the aspect of the challenges, of course, there are a lot of challenges that are tied towards this, which cuts across challenges between universal ethical principles and also the local norms, trying to find a harmonious balance between the universal ethical AI principles and also local norms. And of course, opportunities can also arise, which cuts across, can arise through dialogues, collaboration between AI practitioners, community representatives, as well as policymakers and others. This basically why this is done is to craft an ethical guideline that reflects the unique cultural context of African societies. Now, why I'm mentioning all of this is because we are always in front of data every single day for as much as the information. I've been in the creative space for a long period of time. And for most of the creative concepts I come up with when I'm working on certain projects or certain programs or working with certain brands to solve certain problems, I realize that I get most of this creativity from the amount of data that I'm giving access to. That's why you see, for people to be able to build some level of projects or maybe build some level of standard values in certain regions, they go through processes of collecting data. Most of these data collection processes could be through souvenirs. Is it, what do they call it? Is it surveys? Yes, sorry. Surveys, and also extracting content through word of mouth. Maybe you can just ask somebody, hi, what's your name? Amaka Ukuta. Hope you're fine today. Where are you from? This. All of those information that you're possibly giving to me are going to be what I will use as a creative personnel to work on subsequent information. So the little information that we give majority of the time is defined as data, and these data are processed into actual information. If these data are not released, the information cannot properly be generated effectively. So where I'm just coming from is the context where we are in a world where we consistently need data to an extent to survive. I'm not talking about data like from MTN or Glo or Starcom, but I'm referring to data in the form of getting information or maybe raw, unprocessed facts from people. And then every single day we realize that most of this information are out there, right? And the most important thing, I'm not a legal practitioner. Of course, for most of you that read tech news very well, you've seen AI systems that have been built right now as lawyers. You see robotic lawyers coming into view. And I feel like there are a lot of things that need to be put into consideration so that we don't get scared of the amount of information that has spread across through multiple cities or nations. And you just realize that one day you wake up and Atapo's information is out there and I have to use it without his knowledge, you know? So these are some of the few things that we need to really put into consideration. The government has to come in place, cultural systems and protocols, rules, guidelines, systems of operations has to be put in place to just make sure that as much information or as much data are protected, and these data are not just used for random purposes, but they are used for the original intent to which they are collected. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much for that very elaborate contribution, Light. My next question is my next question touches on the issues of community engagement, co-creation, and data protection. And I'm going to direct this to you, Susan. So how can community engagement and co-creation processes involving representatives from diverse cultural backgrounds lead to the development of AI systems that prioritize data protection, cultural sensitivity, and respect for local values? I think I would send that question to you first, and then I'll also ask Thomas for his contributions after your presentation.
Sure. Thank you for the question, as Light was speaking, I was thinking about one of the other recent cases in Kenya, which was the WorldCoin launch. And initially it was met with a lot of wonder and kind of speculation. And then the government agencies and regulators came in to start to investigate the registration process. And then it started to arise that there were various privacy concerns that needed to be addressed. And this further led to the regulator issuing a statement along with other government agencies. And then the court came in to issue a ruling to effectively halt the operations of WorldCoin. And this is a direct example of culture and also the privacy concerns that come with some of these technologies that are being deployed across Africa. And so for our example, when it comes to community engagement, one of the biggest players is public awareness, sensitization among the citizenry as to data protection. Maybe I can share some of the statistics that we have currently. The Amnesty International did a survey where they uncovered that 54% of Kenyans are unaware of their right to privacy. And the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development identified that only 44% of Kenyans are concerned about their online privacy. And this is a stark difference to Egypt and Nigeria, for example, who are at 90% as per the Ipsos report. And so you're seeing that this idea of kind of lack of awareness and lack of kind of the community coming to participate in some of these instances is leading to abuse of data and kind of making them more vulnerable to search incidences. And there were a number of cases where allegedly people were having issues with their eyes because the registration process for WorldCoin was having your iris scanned. So some people would report on social media that they're having issues with their eyes. Some people reported blindness. And of course, this causes concern in terms of public interest because they're wondering, okay, first of all, how did this happen? Where is the government? And so it of course influences culture and influences perception, and negative perception leads to a lower rate of adoption when it comes to kind of technological innovations being adopted. So I think community engagement and specifically public awareness and public participation is a key element when it comes to positive data protection, regulation principles and policies, because the people have to be involved. They need to understand what are the implications of data? What is the value of data? And across Africa, we are yet to kind of unify and have an aligned data ecosystem because, as Thomas mentioned, there are only a number of countries in Africa that have enacted data protection laws. There are about 15 that are yet to enact these laws. And I think Smart Africa is doing a good job in terms of facilitating this, as well as the African Union. We do have the Continental Data Policy Framework that I think it's from last year by the African Union that ideally is promoting equitable access of digital and data-driven technologies for all Africans. And so you're seeing that we are starting to have some frameworks that will help and promote positive and good governance when it comes to data. But I think in terms of community engagement, there's still a long way to go. Locally, our regulator has begun public awareness programs across the country in different counties. However, it's still lacking because again, Kenyans are dealing with immediate concerns of, you need to put food on the table. You're dealing with, high fuel prices. You're dealing with tax. So there are some competing kind of priorities and interests sometimes. And so there really is a bit of work to be done, but I believe that it's important, even as regulation is coming in and national strategies and policies are coming in. We're seeing this, for example, in Mauritius, Egypt, and Rwanda. I think Tanzania is also already has a strategy on AI. As we're beginning to have this conversation on how we want to look at artificial intelligence, how it will help us, and how we look to govern it, and the various strategies that we're going to deploy, we also need to include, for example, aspects like consumer protection. How are we going to cater for the interests of individuals as they're engaging online or as they're interfacing with these artificial intelligence technologies? Even in the way that we perceive data, how are we looking at engaging, and you spoke about co-creation as well, how are we engaging the public to decide what are our cultural values, what is our stake, and what is our perspective, and where do we look to go in terms of harnessing artificial intelligence? Is it fitting our problems? Do we understand, and have we identified the specific issues that we're looking to address with regards to these technologies? And thereby kind of having, does it make sense for us? So I think it's really important to have these honest and realistic conversations, as well as establish practical safeguards specifically for data. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Susan. That was a very robust response. Over to you, Thomas. Do you have any further additions or contributions towards, to Susan's submissions?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, talking about the community engagement, the challenges, sorry, talking about the challenges. One of the speakers mentioned the issue about local expertise. Now, Africa is I believe the youngest continent. The continent with the youngest population, and that means that there is new talent coming in every day. However, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, please. I can hear you.
Okay, sure. So yeah, like I was saying, there is new talent every day. However, there are issues of immigration, people moving out of the continent, and so there's that talent drain on the continent. So this poses a huge challenge, because if these talents stayed on the continent, chances are their solutions will be homegrown. They'll be influenced by what they see or what they have known for the longest time, and then they build solutions to address those problems. However, when they leave, they find themselves in different environments, and so they are influenced by those things that they see, and they end up building solutions to match up to those problems. And this is critical. I think in the whole world, it is only the UAE that has like a ministry of artificial intelligence. I know there are, Ghana, for example, the minister recently announced that there's going to be one created. And so I'm positive other countries as well are at various stages of implementing this at the national level. At least things like this, when they come up, the youth can have some form of vision, or some form of leverage on building that the government is interested in or want to support. And so this may reduce the migration from the continent. But once this still happens, Africa will be lacking, and it's going to be forever be a challenge, because we are not going to have enough people. We can have the legislation and all that, but then at the end of the day, once the solutions are not homegrown and they are going to be importing, I can put it like that, they are going to be importing the solutions. There's always going to be the adaptation will now have to take place. But then compared to if being homegrown, we realize that would be less challenging. But that said, also, in as much as it's a challenge, there also is opportunity, because I don't believe we can have. I think the last statistic, over 1 million people emigrated from Africa last year, but the continent is over 1 billion. and I think about 70% are still young people, and so there are still people around, and also creates opportunity for those who emigrate to collaborate with those who stay, who choose to stay or end up staying, to also learn from there and build solutions. And so, in as much as it's a challenge, it's also an opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Thomas, for your contribution. My next question speaks particularly to privacy, consent, and data protection within the cultural context. And I'll just be addressing the question to Mr. Yemi, and hopefully some further contributions from Susan as well. I mean, since this is majorly, I mean, to a large extent, is majorly a legal question. So my question is, what considerations are essential for ensuring that privacy, consent principles, and data protection in
Hello.
AI respect the cultures and perspectives of NATS?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
Yes,
hear
please.
we
me?
can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think the considerations have actually been touched on one way or the other by the other speakers. I think I would start with the issue which was raised regarding cultural sensitivity, and I think that was touched on by Susan. Um, so again, sometimes as a result of what I would call perhaps fallacy and also indoctrination, either religious or cultural, consent is not given by certain persons with regards to artificial technology or interacting with artificial intelligence because they feel there would be some type of cultural consequence if you interact in a particular way, right? And this needs to be addressed. And I guess the way to address this would be from an engagement perspective, community engagement perspective, and also, so there are two ways, right? There's a community engagement element. There's also what I would call the inclusive engagement element. Now, inclusive engagement would be perhaps at the point of developing some of these technologies during perhaps data gathering, system specification development, and things like that. It may be useful to engage the community. It may be useful to also engage potential users who are Africans so that they can ventilate some of their concerns. And some of these things may be useful even before you get to where you have developed perhaps the technology and you are going into what we call the beta testing, right? On the part of community engagements and educational initiatives, I think it may also be useful by developers of these technologies to be able to educate potential users, right, with regards to what are the privacy elements or what are the privacy issues around the use of such technologies. Now, there's a possibility, right, and this perhaps we may have to blame on capitalism, whereby there's a possibility that potential developers may not necessarily be interested in taking some of these engagements either from an inclusive engagement point of view, a community engagement point of view. And this is where the regulators also need to be able to drive that process. Because if the users and people who will be interacting with the technology are adequately engaged, perhaps it may be easier to get consent with regards to the use of these technologies, and also for developers and even regulators, it may also be necessary to explore alternative ways of getting consent right? Perhaps maybe on a communal basis, depending on what you're trying to do. Or you actually have to develop what I call an African solution with regards to the consent mechanism, with regards to some of these technologies, right? And above all, the regulator should play its role to ensure that developers of this technology follow the the consent principle to ensure that consent is actually clear, unambiguous, and given freely. In my view, this will foster trust by the users and also most likely take into consideration the peculiarities of the African society with regards to development of artificial intelligence technology. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ken. Suzanne, over to you, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I really resonate with a lot of what the previous speaker has said. And I think I would highlight two things. So in my mind, I'm looking at amendments and or updates to existing laws and regulations, specifically within data protection. So in the case of Kenya, there's a current working group that is submitting recommendations for the Data Protection Act 2019 to include specifically a definition on direct marketing, and also to include a definition on unsolicited communication. And this is kind of an emerging challenge that's being experienced from, when we enacted the act and we were just kind of getting into the swing of things. And now we are seeing that there's a need to start having clarity on some of these sections, some of these regulations, specifically in the way of implementation. So it's important to understand that it's an ongoing journey, and there will be arising or emerging challenges which will need to be kind of addressed or integrated when it comes to the existing or new laws that are going to come into force. An example that comes to mind is I think a week or 2 weeks ago, the data protection regulator in Kenya issued penalties worth 9,735,000. And one of those was to entertainment establishments for posting images of their patrons without consent. And so when you would go on social media, you would see kind of an entertainment establishment posting a picture, but they've put smiley faces on the faces of their patrons. And this was their idea of trying to avoid these any further penalties. And so we're seeing that the Data Protection Act, there is an obligation for an organization to establish technical and organizational measures. However, if they do not understand what that means, they will adopt creative, but sometimes inadequate measures to try and meet these compliance concerns. And so it's important to also understand that there are different types of businesses, there are different stakeholders involved in this ecosystem, and it'll be good to build capacity for them to be able to meet compliance and also respect the rights of individuals. And so I think as we go along in this journey from starting to enact the Data Protection Act to moving and trying to adapt to circumstances such as the deployment of artificial intelligence technologies, it'll be important to stay agile by updating and amending existing laws and considering these emerging challenges or emerging issues. Maybe something else that I can say around consent is privacy and consent is when you look at there's someone that spoke to this earlier about someone calling them or texting them on WhatsApp and saying that someone else sent their number. I think even in terms of our own cultures, specifically in companies, we need to start looking at when we're doing trainings, when we're building capacity internally towards kind of having better data protection compliance or practices around personal data, we need to also keep in mind that over a period of time, people have been familiar or have certain habits that might not promote privacy. And so we need to start to tackle those behaviors or tackle those habits so that we're promoting privacy internally and also on a more kind of public level, so that it's not just, oh, I sent someone your number and I didn't tell you, or now someone is calling you and you have no idea how they had your number. It really is down to these type of practices that can be adjusted, for example, through a company training on data protection, because it always trickles down to the household, it trickles down to someone's lifestyle. Once they understand that this is the value of data and these are the laws, they will then potentially adopt better practices around protecting that data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was a very elaborate and informative response. My next question, still goes to you. Right. So, you might just hang on and stay with me for a while. All right. So, you spoke on education and, awareness on data protection rights and, yeah. So by potential customers and users of these artificial intelligence technologies. So my next question is, what strategies can be employed to promote education and awareness about the ethical use of AI within diverse cultural contexts, particularly empowering individuals and communities to advocate for data protection practices that respect their cultural values in data governance? I think you can first give us your submissions, and then Light will also give us his thoughts on some of these strategies as well.
So I think this has to be one of my favorite questions, because when you talk about diverse cultural backgrounds, one of the first things that comes to mind is language. So, for example, may I ask what language do you speak? What's your do you call it vernacular or native tongue? I don't know, but what is it?
Yeah, we call it's vernacular over here. Ibibio.
So, I love Ibibio. Okay, so what do you call artificial intelligence in Ibibio?
I'm not sure we have we have a definition for that just yet.
Exactly. It's the same thing in Kenya. Like, I don't have a Luo definition for artificial intelligence. And what is happening in East Africa is there are different groups that are working to include terminology around artificial intelligence, data protection in Kiswahili, because Kiswahili in East Africa is a unifying language. And so why language is important is because it is a powerful tool towards public awareness, demystification, and building trust and transparency. And so it is a low-cost way of navigating a lot of the stigma, a lot of the uncertainty, and a lot of the complexity of data protection and artificial intelligence. So you can imagine if in all our respective vernaculars or native tongues, we had terminology, we had vocabulary to speak about these technological advancements. Another important factor to consider is I call it the rural to urban divide. You'll see that governments prioritize urban development at the detriment of rural areas. And ideally, it should be an equal playing field. Everyone should have access to these technologies. Everyone should at least have a basic understanding of these technologies. However, you will see that most probably in rural areas, they're speaking Ibibio, they're speaking Yoruba, they're speaking, Twi or Fanti, or they're speaking different languages. And so part of, and this is also to speak to one of the previous speakers' mention of sovereignty and ownership. One of the ways that we start to navigate these conversations and identify our hard line as Africa and as African countries is by integrating these technologies in our languages. I can go home and explain to my grandmother what artificial intelligence is. because it is integrated by design into our language, and therefore creating a pathway for me to communicate and convey the message. And so even if she doesn't understand about black boxes and machine learning and quantum computing, she can understand that this is an advancement that maybe does 1, 2, 3, or allows her to do 1, 2, 3. And so I think this is quite a pivotal way to look at educating and also creating awareness around data protection and artificial intelligence. The second thing that I think about is the creative industries. In Kenya, the creative industry is fast contributing to GDP. And we have our research institute that published an economic report this year that speaks to that. And so how are we integrating creative industries to help us communicate and articulate some of these issues around artificial intelligence and data protection? Yes, we should have the high-level conversations with policymakers, private sector actors, etc. But in terms of public awareness and creating overall understanding, we can integrate or embrace the value of artistry and creative industries, because they often are in the habit of communicating abstract things that are abstract and things that are more complex in very simple ways. And so I think it really will take innovative practices and innovative perspectives towards kind of navigating some of these things. And I think Africa is uniquely positioned to not only regulate AI, data protection, but also to potentially harmonize so that we have a unified voice when we speak to, for example, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Something that is, of course, being talked about is how do we mitigate data localization, keeping data in our jurisdictions, as well as data flows, cross-border data transfers. And so these are conversations that we really need to start having. And I believe that we have the network of African data protection authorities. I believe that they are in a great position to facilitate some of these conversations in liaison with the African Union, so that they can start to highlight and create more visibility around the specific challenges and coordinate, because it will take a coordinated effort not only to create awareness, but to educate. And Thomas spoke quite well and aptly on building capacity. It's important for each country to have the technical capacity to navigate these things. When we talk about data breaches, we've seen so many data breaches across the West, even in Africa. How are companies and regulators built or structured or situated to deal with these situations such that they can advise these companies? So I think those would be the two things that I would say. And leave it to the rest of the panelists to share their contributions.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was a very succinct response to the questions. Thank you so much once again. Lights, over to you. Would like to hear your contributions to this particular issue, please.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Weme. And thank you so much, Susan. While Susan was asking, she said, what do they call artificial intelligence in Nigeria? I was going to say intelligence with the artificial. So that's in Pidgin. I don't think, I'm actually an Igbo boy, so I don't think there's any name to that. So I'll first start off by saying the strategies for promoting education and awareness in the diverse cultural context. This may possibly include tailored education programs, of which Susan laid emphasis on educating people. Also outreach through local leaders, as well as multimedia campaigns that emphasizes ethical use of AI while respecting cultural values. Now, if most of us know, I'm coming from actually the part of being in the space of people, or maybe like a team that works on these AI systems. And I mentioned initially the different methods or the different ways or protocols that we do collect most of these data from people. Now, the interesting thing is this, a lot of information are out there, but very few people within within this space understand or know how most of this information are passed or gotten. So this is where education needs to come into view. Most people don't even know how their data are collected. A lot of people, like right now, if I ask the regular man the different kinds of data, maybe the layman the different kinds of data, or maybe someone that's in OMS states, I will just ask him how do they collect, where are some of these data, what kind of data are these? Most people don't even know, so this is where enlightenment campaign comes in. This is where strategies come in that enlightens people on how most of these data are collected. There are different kinds of data. There are specifically three, which is the visual data, the textual data, and the third one is visual data, the textual data, and also the numeric data. Now, the visual data, this is the kind of data that they are gotten through maybe cameras. Maybe it requires when Amaka shows her face in front of the camera and then it captures her in real time. And then most of the information, how she blinks her eyes. You've seen AI systems that act like that. Like as of recent, I was interacting with a physical robot in Abuja here in Nigeria, where I was asking the robot certain questions. And from the gestures of the body, of course, Nigerian robots is not as professional as most of the high standard robots. So it was actually a very beautiful and amazing robot that was built. And now the gestures of her body, the way she was kind of interacting, it's a lady, the way she was kind of interacting, and most of those can only tell you that most of this information we are gotten from real humans. This is where you interact with physical elements, right? You interact with maybe like for most of us that know how, like you've seen Google's AI system where you can scan, have a flower in front of me, you just carry a flower and then you scan in front of the camera. And if it's a physical flower, Google's AI became so intelligent that it could capture the flower, tell you the exact name of the flower, tells you where the flower is found, and certain other information, right? I can look in front of or maybe you can even see most of these things in face recognition systems, where before you walk into a room, it has to scan your face. That's the door itself has to scan your face before you get into that room. And before it can scan your face, obviously you should have imputed your face into that door. That's the technology that was used to build that door. So most of these data are collected through multiple means. But where most people don't understand how their data are leaked or assessed or generated is where we need to put in so much effort into educating people. I feel like beyond just cultural leaders, I think the government has a very huge part to play, because of course, if the government doesn't have like a solid level of backing on certain things, there's just a very little that the community can actually do. So education programs have to come in play. Schools need to also understand that most of these data and information that are collected from students, most of the students should possibly be aware of how data are used and how the data are going to be converted into valid information. I was given an instance of a robot. You've seen most of these AI systems right now that are currently online, that all you just need to do is to go to that particular AI system and you impute your voice, you tell it, you just say, hi, my name is Light, I need you to understand how my voice sounds, and for the remaining set of the scripts, just help me pronounce exactly how my voice sounds. Now, just with that little information that you've done, you can now start rehearsing. I mean, you can just with that little information that you've given to the AI system, all the AI system will possibly do is gather this information, gather this data, convert them into actual information and put it out there. Then you can now read out an entire script. There are a lot of technologies that are actually in this space currently. It will read an entire script for you, and it sounds exactly how Mr. Thomas will possibly sound in the news. It will sound exactly how Mr. Oyeyemi will possibly sound in the news. And these are some very interesting things that most people do not even know how most of this information are passed. I think also in schools, it's very, very important that the trends in artificial intelligence and the trends in modern technologies need to be properly passed across to people in form of education programs and all of those things. I'll still give like another type of one of the strongest trends right now most of us actually know in AI, which is the trends in text-based AI systems. Almost everybody here knows about ChatGPT. Almost everybody knows about ChatGPT. I remember the first day that ChatGPT launched. I know a lot of people in my office, they collected Shaggy. Most people literally were displaced. But yeah, there's a lot of misconception about AI taking your jobs and all of those. But yeah, it took some people's jobs. But interestingly, it cannot take your job. right? If you understand how to actually use most of these AI systems, right? This is also where education comes in. Like, I think for the last time I was interviewed on Channels TV, where I was asked about the trends in artificial intelligence and if AI can actually take our jobs. Now, I saw that from multiple articles that I read, people are scared about the trends in artificial intelligence. But interestingly, if we have proper education protocols or processes or systems that are put into place, a lot of people will see artificial intelligence as a means to aid human intelligence, not a means to lay off more people from their jobs. I realized that even after the thing shook the workforce within the company, we had to hire people, right? I'm just saying that we fired, but we actually did not fire. Let me point that out. We had to hire people that were very, very good in using most of these AI systems, right? We had to hire people that were very good in using most of these AI systems. Like Canva right now, most of us know Canva, which is an image-based design software. When Canva came into view, it basically mentioned people were scared that it was going to lay off every single person who understands how to use Photoshop or CorelDRAW or most of these design softwares and all. But interestingly, right now, a lot of people that use Canva even monetize their Canva and use AI on Canva to build even better designs. A lot of designs are out there. So if people are not properly enlightened, they will basically feel like AI is there to replace them, or AI is there to rule over the entire world. But this is where enlightenment really comes in. This is where education programs really comes in. People need to understand how their data are gotten, how these AI systems to an extent work, function. I'm not referring to the technical aspects, how most of these AI systems function, how most of these AI systems can help them to upgrade processes, can speed up operations, can help them to act even more supernatural. Of course, there's a way an AI system. And there's something I really want to even bring to our notice. For most of us that have actually interacted with most of this AI system, if you realize AI is becoming so smart, for most of you that actually know what I'm talking about, AI is becoming so smart. If you ask an AI system certain questions, it will give you some level of information that even your very intelligent friend might possibly never give you till he dies. You know what I'm talking about? Now, what I basically mean is that there is a lot of information and data that is pumped into most of these AI systems, and people need to understand where these data are coming from. I understand how we get access to most of this data, right? But a lot of people do not understand how most of these data are gotten. And this is where I'm just basically talking about the education aspect and how to speed up enlightenment programs around different continents or different cities across the world. So I think with these very few points, it's very necessary and 100% important that we put education programs into actual practice and get more people to understand the values and the trends that comes with modern technology and also the impact that it has to put in people's lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that very elaborate contribution, Light. Speaking on the advancements and interactions between AI and human beings, I recall recently about a week or two ago, I think I ran into a video online where I think it was one of our musicians from Nigeria, Burna Boy, but he was singing. I mean, he was singing and not he was singing someone else's song. I believe one of the songs belonged to maybe an Ed Sheeran, if I remember correctly. But it wasn't actually Burna Boy that was singing; it was AI. But also recently, I've noticed a trend with artists, particularly musicians, issuing statements and basically issuing cease and desist letters to developers of AI and users of AI to, stop using their, facial features and all that in, applying those facial features and basically their personal data to different other areas. For instance, again, looking at Burna Boy and Ed Sheeran, of course, first of all, they are what do you call it, intellectual property concerns arising from, the use of AI and the representation of one artist in another artist's work. So, you can see how, speaking on Light's contribution, as he has recently submitted, I can see that AI has developed to a very large extent. Quite apart from ChatGPT, you can see that, with the use of AI, an artist can actually be visually represented, and a user online actually think that's actually the artist. Meanwhile, that image or that video or that recording was portrayed by AI. So, I mean, these are some of the ways we can see how much advancements artificial intelligence has gotten over the years. So, moving on to our last but not the least question from our first talking points. We have one question in the Q&A, which will be taken after this last question. The last question speaks to collaboration, right? Collaboration across cultural divides and data protection. So, this question is addressed to Mr. Oke, and we'll also hear further contributions from Thomas, please. Right. So the question is, how can cross-cultural collaboration in AI development and research enhance the alignment of AI systems with local norms, cultural values, and data protection? And what are the benefits of such collaborations?
Thank you, UM. I think the first point to note would be collaboration is always good, right? I mean, to the extent that a crime is not being committed or there's no type of collusion, collaboration is always good. If you are looking at the African continent, the question would be, who do we collaborate with? Or what would be the driver for collaboration? My views are that we should collaborate or two things should be the drivers. One, the relevance of the technology to the African market, to the African need, and also to solve African problems, right? And the second would now be commonality of problems or commonality, not commonality, similarity of culture, right? And perhaps a good place to start for Africa would be to go to Asia, because one, I think they have the type of technology we are looking, I mean, they have the type of technology in terms of artificial intelligence that would be useful to us. From a cultural perspective, I don't see so much of a wide gap, right, with some of our cultural nuances. So if you look at perhaps I mean, being a Nigerian, perhaps if I want to look at collaborating with regards to the Nigerian market, I think the first jurisdiction that would come to me would be a place like India. We're close in terms of demographics. We're close in terms of some parts of our culture, right? And we're also close in terms of some of our needs. So that would be one of the drivers. But what are the benefits, right? Would be there's a likelihood that we would have diverse inputs, different perspectives in terms of how this technology can be developed, can be used, and also how to guarantee safety of data subjects during use, because that is quite important from a data protection perspective. The collaboration would also help in order to, help us to be able to adapt and localize some of our challenges in Africa, and also fit in some of the problems which may be peculiar to us from the cultural perspective. But I think all in all, collaboration will be useful from a global, in order to know what the international standards are, right, with regards to AI development, and also how AI development also still recognizes the peculiarity of cultural sensitivity as well. So my closing remark on this would be collaboration is good, again, to the extent that there is no negativity involved in that process. And also the driver for collaboration will be looking at our technological need as Africans, and also collaborating with a jurisdiction that perhaps is similar to ours. This does not mean that we can't look at other jurisdictions, but perhaps similar jurisdictions would help us quickly solve some of our challenges in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oke. Thomas, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Before I answer this particular question, I want to speak on the consent, because consent, oftentimes we assume people understand. Let's say the end user license agreements. Oftentimes these solutions or AI solution providers come across. Sometimes you need a lawyer to even understand what is being asked of you, or what you are being asked to consent to. And so, with all your level of education, you may still be limited and need a lawyer. So you can imagine someone or people in rural communities. It can be quite challenging. Now, also, I think one solution or one way to that would be to, I mean, after you understand yourself, because you are exposed and you are privileged, you may want to be a guarantor, and then also advise people and then let them understand what is being asked of them. Another thing that I want to mention is the community ownership, and the actually advocating for free and open source software, because I mean, one major, I prefer free and open software, because that way it is owned by the communities. It's not owned by just one company or one individual where their interest will be over that of the masses. But once it's owned by the community, there's some form of accountability, and you cannot just do anything. And so it looks like that's on the low when it comes to AI solutions. But then again, I believe that advocacy for that will also be a way to deal with some of the challenges with AI. Now to the question on how cross-cultural collaboration can align. I mean, enhance this alignment. I believe that one way would be to have some form of language localization. So, for example, in as much as we all fortunately understand English and we're able to collaborate, even though you are Nigerian, you have your native language. Uh, Susan is Kenyan, but then we are all able to collaborate using English. Now, when there is that bit of, of language localization for the continent, I believe that it will go a long way to enhance AI, and then also get people to use AI as well. And then by doing this, it will also be important to have get some inputs from them to be able to address their problems. And so there's going to be that bit of user-centric design incorporated in AI to align the solutions, which will also help in customizing solutions, because again, because we may be similar but we are very different. But then if we're able to create solutions in languages, in let's say Chi or Swahili, I mean Kiswahili, or Yoruba. Yoruba is a language, right? Usually, I think they associate
Yes,
it with, it's a language, perfect.
yes.
So yeah, I mean, why did I even ask? Because I know it's a language anyway. So limiting it to people, let's say for example, speaking Yoruba or Hausa, then we can have that enhancement and collaboration for AI, and which is going to uh, it's going to improve community collaboration or community involvement in use of digital tools or AI tools. Now, when all of this is done, I mean, the benefits are enormous. I mean, it's going to improve user acceptance, because if let's say your solution is only in English, to the many people who do not understand or cannot speak English, but then are very fluent in Hausa, you can capture that market as well while keeping your English users as well. And so there's going to be an improved numbers for you, and anybody in tech will understand what the numbers game is. The more your numbers, even if they are not paying and they are using, that's good news, because you can leverage on that to get more data and then build solutions. And so getting more people using and improving your number base or your client base or the number of users is important. Now, this is also going to reduce bias. One of the benefits will also be to reduce bias, because, I mean, even in big tech companies like Google, the development of AI solutions saw some bias against, let's say, Black people or African Americans, because the training for these AI systems were being made for, should I say, the other races. And so you realize that there's that limitation there. But then while incorporating cultural norms for people on the continent or people from various African countries, you realize that this will reduce the bias, and then um, even with the like Light was mentioning about people speaking, people using AI solutions to get their voices, realize that because initially there was the limitation of people with voices like mine or accents like mine, that solution was not available. But while incorporating people on the continent or people with voices or accents like mine, you realize that you're able to get such solutions to address some of your problems. Also, the social and economic impact immense, because if you have more people using it, then uh, obviously the probability of getting paid customers also increases, and so there can be some form of economic remuneration for these companies. And I'm sure the government will be very interested, because once businesses are growing, it means they're going to get taxes, and these taxes are going to be used to develop the countries to get their various infrastructure or other bit or any the needs of the country. And once you have more people, you can also be certain that uh, these solutions are going to be sustainable, because they know that it is something that is from them, particularly the language. Languages are not going anywhere. I mean, even if they go extinct, you still have people that will forever speak their native languages. And it's quite interesting, because I've noticed a trend that, well, at least for the case in Ghana, I've noticed that when people grow old, they tend to prefer to read everything in their local language or speak their local language of them. I think the English they or the French or whatever they use is mainly for professional or for work purposes. But once they have no need to work or anything, you realize that they prefer, even though they are fluent in English or they are proficient in English or French or whichever foreign language, they tend to prefer to use their local languages, up to the point that when they are using mobile phones or any solution, they prefer to do this in their local languages. And so yes, there'll forever be a market. And then once these solutions incorporate these cultural values and cultural norms, it's going to ensure the sustainability of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Ms. Delke, for your contributions. Thank you, Light. Just before we bring this session to a close, we have a question in the Q&A section. Since it's specifically speaking to Nigerian law on data protection, pardon me, Mr. Oke, you please crave your indulgence to uh, help us address the question. All right. So the question is from Chinemeze Johnson. It says, I believe the permission of the data owner is required before such data can be used by a third party, and a mobile number qualifies as personal data. I think this is speaking specifically to the issue of the loan sharks that was used as a scenario, I believe, by Light. So the question is, does it suffice to say that loan sharks, as referred to by one of the speakers, require the permission or authorization of individual owners of the mobile numbers found or extracted from the database of these debtors before proceeding to send out the widespread unsolicited demand notices? If the answer is in the affirmative, what are the remedies within the Nigerian legal framework available to any third party who feels that his or her private data, that's a mobile number in this case, has been accessed without a prior authorization to do so?
Okay. Thank you, Uwem, for the question, and thank you, Chinemeze. Um, the answer is in the affirmative, right? But before we even get to the answer, right, why do we say that the answer is in the affirmative? Um, there has to be some legitimate purpose for processing personal data, right? And we know that there are quite a number of them under the Nigerian law, which would include things around consent, which was spoken about, things around legitimate interest, things around contractual obligation, legal obligation, to mention a few, right? The scenario which you've painted, there is no legitimate purpose for such loan sharks to extract your personal data from the telephone book of the debtor, right? They can do whatever they want to do with the personal data of the debtor to the extent that the debtor consents to that. But going beyond that to go and extract telephone numbers such as numbers of any other person on the phone book of that person is outrightly wrong. There's no legal basis for that, and there is no defense for that. Now, in terms of remedy, there are two remedies that I can readily prescribe. The first will be to report to the regulator, right? And if you are unsatisfied as a data subject, you can go to court. Now, has this been tested in the Nigerian, under the Nigerian laws? Absolutely, yes. We have seen the decided case. Interestingly, I think one of the panelists yesterday was the man that took one of these loan sharks to court and he won. There's a case of Olumide Babalola versus Soko loans, which actually typifies what we have just described here, right? And the court awarded damages against Soko loan. That's one. Also, regulators have actually, the regulator has also actually issued a fine against that particular loan app company as well. So yes, there are remedies, and can you get the remedies based on precedent that we have seen in the Nigerian market? Yes, you can get remedies both from the regulator and from the court system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oke. Thank you, Chinemeze. I hope your question was satisfactorily answered.
Sorry, Mr. Uweme. I'm sorry,
Yes,
can I chip
please.
in a bit?
Yes,
Yes.
please. By all
Okay.
means.
Yeah, awesome. So coming from the tech aspect, I think I mentioned, I raised the concern of how loan apps have been able to get access to data. And of recent, my company has worked on certain projects which cuts across the finance and all of those things. Now, there are certain API integrations that when you put into certain application, it gets you a certain level of data that's access to some kind of information, right? This is coming from the backend aspect of working on certain projects. Now, how they're able to get some of your information, which Mr. Oyeyemi has clearly mentioned that it is totally wrong for them to have those kind of information, is through certain protocols that were put in place on the stage of building most of those products, right? Now, of recent, there was a very huge concern that was made by a lot of persons, and these concerns had to do with what are the policies that, okay, I want to drag this person to court, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And Google realized that there was a lot of policies. There were a lot of access that they gave to certain organizations. And of recent, right now, as I'm speaking to you, as of it became very effective from May 39th, if I can clearly remember. Don't worry, my company has not worked on any of them, that any of these loan apps that reported information from people, right? But Google placed in certain level of policies in place that from May 31st this year, you cannot have some kind of access to certain data of individuals. Right now, I don't know if anybody has borrowed from any of these loan apps of recent, but if you check of recent, you might possibly not remember any of these loan apps sending you messages. I don't know if anybody can remember of recent, if you've actually gotten most of these messages. I remember the first time, there are certain protocols that have been put in place, and most of these regulatory protocols are being supervised by the Central Bank of Nigeria. There's a supervision from FCCPC, which is the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. There's also a regulatory framework that has been put in place by NITDA, which is National Information and Technology Development Agency. Now, if you realize at any point that any of these tech institutes, or maybe any of these products that were built on the base of giving you financial aid, any of those, maybe because of one or two incidences, you're unable to meet up with your financial obligation, and they decide deliberately to harass you. There are regulatory frameworks right now in Nigeria that you can drag them. The Mr. Oyeyemi just clearly mentioned, if you go to court, you win. That's if there's no bias in the system. But of course, if you go to court, you actually win. No loan app has that right of permission to harass you beyond your personal confinement. But the thing is this, they will ask you for some kind of information. They'll ask you for your BVN. The reason why they're asking you for some of these things, and of course, a code will be sent to you, They will have access to some of your data, like they'll know how much your credit scores are. Yeah, like if you've defaulted on any loan app before they can actually give you some amount of money. The reason why I know most of these things is because I'm in this space, right? So they will ask you most of those questions before they can go ahead to give you money. And when they request for your access to contacts, you see sometimes they will tell you, so loan app want to have access to your contacts. Or maybe you download Snapchat. Let me use Snapchat as an instance. It's different from loan apps. Snapchat will tell you they want to have access to your camera, right? I want to have access to your microphone. Once you're giving them access to most of those things, they have the access already because you're requesting for the access. But now the regulatory frameworks that are put in place are for the base that when they have this access, what then is the limit or the maximum extent to which they should go to use those information? Do you understand? They need those assets to be able to function effectively. But where this regulatory framework have to come into place and be very, very effective is the extreme nature to which they can actually go to use most of this information. So to put it in a summary, loan apps do not have the right to harass you in any way. If they harass you, don't worry, just contact Mr. Oyeyemi. He will take up the case legally for you. Or you contact Susan or any other person, you know. So I'm just basically bringing out our notice that these are some of the few things that like, for example, like we worked on a betting platform for a company in Manila, and before we could launch that betting platform, there are a lot of processes, the protocols to even get people to sign up, the protocols to get people to do certain things was a lot because we had to wait for permissions to do that, right? So there are a lot of protocols right now. It might not be so open to a lot of Nigerians, but trust me, there are a lot of protocols. And if you feel like your data rights have been breached, then just do what I just mentioned. You don't have to tell Mr. Oyeyemi that I told you that he can be your legal advisor, but just reach out to him, you know. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Light, for that very, very succinct contribution.
Mr. Tato, I may want to come in a bit.
Yes, please.
Just to mention that there was a similar case in Ghana. There was a similar case in Ghana with loan companies doing something similar. And so if you are Ghanaian and you are listening or watching, know that all they have said also applies in Ghana and you can take them on. And so if you find yourself in this situation, just contact either the Bank of Ghana, the Data Protection Commission, or any lawyer you know, and then you'll be sorted. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Susan, I don't know if you want to say anything from the Kenyan jurisdiction. Is there any deviation from the Nigerian and the Ghanaian jurisdiction as regards remedies to data subjects who have been reached out to by loan sharks without any lawful basis? So do you have any? Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite similar, but in our case, the regulator and government, put a firm stop to that. And in terms of digital lending, there's been a series of guidances and regulations just to kind of clamp down on that. So yes, I mean we have experienced that, but I think the laws are working and enforcement is working. So, case in point, one of the penalties that were issued by the regulator was to a digital lending service or provider that was harassing its clients. So, yeah, I believe the same carries in our jurisdiction as well.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Mr. Oke. Thank you, Light. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Susan. Even to our host, thank you. Thank you all for taking out the time to join us on this very informative session. And I hope we've been able to learn a lot, especially regarding the remedies you have. I mean, I think towards the ending part of this session was very, very informative for a number of us who would or who may have received messages or emails or correspondence from one loan shark or the other. I mean, at this point, you know what to do. If you're in Nigeria, if you're in Ghana, if you're in Kenya, you know who to reach out to, and you know what remedies are available to you. Right. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking our time to join this session. Thank you to our panelists, and do have a wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
OM. You've done a lot of thank yous already to your panelists. Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you for listening, tuning in. We, at this point, will go on a break before we come back for our second session for today and final session for this year's conclave. It's been amazing so far. It's been very engaging, interesting. I've gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of refreshing information, and we would be back at 11:15 a.m. Yes, 11:15 a.m. to kick off the second session. So at this point, please, ergonomics, stretch, drink water, prepare your tea just like yesterday, and I'll see everyone at 11:15 a.m.
T Group, navigating complexities, delivering solutions. T Group is a multifaceted solution provider encompassing a diverse array of services including tax management, logistics, corporate communication and branding, process automation, data protection and security, human resources, recruitment, construction, and education. Navigating complexities, delivering solutions, and shaping a brighter future for businesses and individuals alike. TaxAid, your trusted partner in navigating complex tax landscapes, providing tailored solutions for your financial success, where taxes meet solutions. TaxTech, spearheading automation solutions across diverse industries, while also delivering data protection and comprehensive cybersecurity services, powering your digital transformation. 21 Search Limited, transforming businesses with top-notch recruitment, training, process and compliance solutions, bridging talent and success. TGL, your technology-driven logistics partner for seamless, cost-effective transportation solutions across the globe, navigating logistics excellence. CCB, the communications arm of the T Group. CCB elevates your corporate identity with strategic communication and branding services, tailored to amplify your brand's message, crafting the ultimate brand experience. First Construct, the leading construction company within the T Group, specializing in creating architectural marvels and building dreams into reality. Beyond construction, building experiences. Dynamico, a pivotal arm of the T Group that is dedicated to fostering educational growth and empowerment through innovative programs and solutions. Empowering minds, shaping futures. T Group, your complete business solution partner, unlocking success across diverse domains. Experience the power of T Group solutions today. T Group, navigating complexities, delivering solutions. T Group is a multifaceted solution provider encompassing a diverse array of services including tax management, logistics, corporate communication and branding, process automation, data protection, and security.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Yes, we just started speaking, Abimbola. I hope you can hear me now. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. It was a quick 15 minutes break. That went by pretty fast, I must say. Thank you so much for joining again. We would go straight into our next session, which is the second session for today, and our final session for this year's conclave. This is fast going, winding up to an end. Our fourth session for the entire conclave is titled Regulatory Frameworks for Data Protection. After all is said and done, it boils down to regulatory frameworks for data protection and how to implement all our laws, regulations, and policies. And to moderate this session, we have Michael Olugbenga-Shile. Olugbenga is a seasoned professional with over 13 years of experience in operations, business development, communications, and strategy, spanning both the educational and business sectors. Throughout his extensive career, Olugbenga has consistently demonstrated excellence in core business operations, client relations, and strategic planning. His unique expertise lies in the meticulous analysis of complex data, yielding valuable insights and aligning business objectives with prevailing market trends. With a discerning eye for emerging opportunities, Olugbenga has successfully led the implementation of innovative strategies that have driven substantial growth in market share and elevated brand positioning. Currently, Olugbenga serves as the Chief Operating Officer at CCB Limited, a distinguished corporate communications brand and registrar at NDP Academy, a leading data protection training academy. He also plays a pivotal role as the partner in charge at Taxid Group's Nigeria West operations. Mr. Olugbenga, thank you so much for joining us today and moderating this final session at this year's conclave. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amaka, for that introduction. And of course, thank you also to all our participants and previous panelists and the moderators as well for a very fantastic and a very interesting discourse so far. Yes, we are on to the final panel session, and I'll just be going right away into doing the relevant introductions. But before we do that, we'll be looking at panel session 4, which is regulatory frameworks for data protection. I have a very interesting set of panelists, of course, with a diverse panel, let me put it that way. Basically, this sub-team stands at the confluence of legal and regulatory dimensions, where we are aiming to strike a delicate balance between safeguarding individuals' data privacy and, of course, propelling technological advancement in African nations. It's a multifaceted exploration that recognizes this pivotal role of regulatory frameworks in shaping the data protection landscape, and at the same time, ensuring that innovation and technological growth continues unabated. So I'll be introducing my panelists at this point for this particular session. I hope they are all in here. Let me just confirm that before I begin to read their citations. Do I have Cynthia Chepkemoy? I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please, can you confirm you're in the house? If you could just speak so we know you're here. Cynthia, please, can you confirm?
Good afternoon. I'm on board.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. We look forward to a great time. So Cynthia is a data protection and privacy counsel in Kenya. She's an attorney licensed to practice law in Kenya and currently serving as a data protection and privacy manager in a financial institution. Cynthia is one of the founding leaders of the Association of Privacy Lawyers in Africa, APLA, which is a connection hub for licensed privacy practitioners in Africa, Apologies. I'm Nigerian, so I tend to do that sometimes. In Africa, she's currently a teaching fellow at the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Policy and an ISC2 candidate pursuing a certification in cybersecurity. Additionally, she's a dedicated cybersecurity GRC analyst with a passion for safeguarding critical information infrastructure. He has experience consulting and training for both local and international organizations. While working as an independent consultant, she has helped organizations analyze their cybersecurity posture and practices in terms of risks assessments, monitoring compliance against the desired maturity level, identifying data breaches and responding to incidents and to align with regulatory requirements, industry standards, and internal policies. Thank you very much for joining this panel, Cynthia, and we look forward to a very interesting conversation. Next on my panel is Mr. Bidemi Olumide. Bidemi, can you confirm you're here, please?
Hi, GB. I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right. So Bidemi Olumide is the CEO of the T Group. So T Group is should I call it, is a large group, of course, with diverse brands. And I'll just read Bidemi's citation. Bidemi is an NDPR and EU GDPR certified privacy rights law practitioner, a lawyer of about 15 years post-qualification experience in Nigeria and African markets. Bidemi brings to bear core executive and managerial skills in helping clients, both corporate, individual, and governments, navigate the complexities of data protection and global privacy rights in general. He has overseen the implementation of both NDPR and GDPR at various corporate, individual, and governmental levels, with effectiveness, efficiency, and commerce at the center of his interventions. Bidemi is currently managing partner at AO2 Law and lead partner of the commercial and criminal law practice at AO2 Law as well as CEO at TaxAid and TaxTech, the chief conveners of the Africa Data Security Conclave. Thank you very much for joining us, Bidemi. And I go on to the next panel list, my next panelist, which is Melody Malusi. Can you confirm you're in, Melody, please?
I am in.
All right, thank you so much, Melody. Melody Malusi is a data protection officer, GDPR certified, and of course, a data privacy consultant also in Kenya. So basically, we have two Kenyans here right now. Fantastic, I like that. Melody Malusi is a data protection officer and data privacy consultant based in Nairobi, Kenya. With over a decade of experience, Melody specializes in establishing data protection frameworks, ensuring GDPR compliance, and proactively addressing potential data privacy issues. Her expertise also extends to ISO, IEC 27001, 2002, and anti-money laundering, making her a valuable asset in safeguarding sensitive information and mitigating risks for organizations. Melody's dedication to data protection is evident through her work in guiding departments, creating data processing policies, and conducting reviews to ensure accountability and compliance. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel, Melody. Then I go to my fourth panelist, that is Razak Adiribibe. Please, can you confirm you're here, Razak, please?
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning.
All right, good morning. Good morning from Nigeria. Good morning. Yes, so Razak Adiribibe is an audit, risk compliance, and data protection CRC credit at the officer at the CRC Credit Bureau Limited in Nigeria. He's a seasoned chartered accountant and compliance professional committed to shaping and improving procedures and processes. His career has been dedicated to ensuring the successful implementation of strategies, meticulous project management, and the establishment of robust protocols. He has consistently evaluated processes, identified accompanying risks, and aligned them with industry standards, policies, and regulatory provisions to enhance profitability while minimizing losses. With over 16 years of invaluable experience in the financial industry, Razak's career has spanned various areas, including banking operations, controls, and business development. His current focus is on audit, risk management, and compliance. As an experienced auditor, he has consistently provided valuable insights and recommendations to strengthen processes, procedures, and controls. His efforts have always been geared towards enhancing effectiveness, efficiency, and cost effectiveness within organizations. Thank you so much for joining us, Razak. And if I may confirm, I don't know if Mr. Yemi Adeniro is here now.
Yeah, good morning. Absolutely, I am here. Can you hear me?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Yemi Adeniran. So I'll just go into your citation very quickly. Yemi is the managing partner of Digital Herb, a cybersecurity and privacy startup in the UK and Nigeria. Yemi has over 25 years experience in cybersecurity, platforms and ecosystems, privacy, governance, risks and compliance. Of course, he's also ISO PCI DSS, SOC2, GDPR and NEPR certified. His international experience cuts across industries such as e-commerce, renewable energy, health, banking and finance, tech and telecoms. He holds a double master's in business administration, MBA, and cybersecurity from the UK and certifications from IAPP in data protection and privacy, BSI ISO 27001, ISMS lead auditor, and ISMS lead implementer, and many more. He is a member of International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP, Information Systems Audit and Control Association, ISACA, British Computer Society, and Institute of Risk Management, IRM. Yemi is on the UK government advisory for startups and sits on several fintech and agrotech boards. His African exposure includes several World Bank projects for Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us, Yemi. And again, once again, thank you to all our panelists for joining us. I see it's a very, very diverse and very rich panel, and I look forward to the very interesting conversations. Again, we're looking at the regulatory frameworks for data protection. So before we go into the talking points, I just want to give us a background into this conversation. I've actually done the introduction earlier on, where we see how this particular theme stands as a very, very significant point when we try to strike that balance between safeguarding individuals' data privacy and propelling technological advancement. Now, some of the things we'll notice here, the first thing is that data protection is a fundamental right. Basically, it's not just a regulatory matter, it's a fundamental right in the digital age. And we understand African nations are increasingly recognizing this importance of data privacy as an intrinsic part of the individual liberties, and also enacting regulatory frameworks to uphold this right. Of course, over the conversations yesterday and earlier today, we're able to touch on some of these particular areas. And we see that there are also some pragmatic approaches to data privacy in place currently. And that quest involves developing regulations that are not just only robust, but are also very flexible. These regulations must adapt to the dynamic digital landscape and provide that solid foundation for safeguarding data, while at the same time supporting innovation. We also find out that we understand that key principles within regulatory frameworks, they revolve mostly around data minimization and purpose limitation. Data minimization advocates for the collection of only necessary data, basically data that is important. You only collect what you need, while purpose limitation restricts data usage to the intended purpose. So it's not just enough to collect the data, you collect the only data that you need. And when you want to actually use that data, you use it only for the intended purpose for which it was collected. And these principles are instrumental in preserving privacy while allowing that responsible use of data for innovation. Then we look at the area also of consent mechanisms and transparency, where we have to emphasize that obtaining informed consent from individuals before collecting their data is a cornerstone of data protection regulations. And transparency in data practices ensures that individuals are aware of how their data is used, and of course provides them with control over their personal information. We'd also go into the area of data localization and cross-border data transfer. A lot of this was talked about yesterday as well. And we want to state here that our regulatory frameworks also address data localization and cross-border data transfer. They determine where data should be stored, where they should be processed and accessed, and provide some guidance on secure data transfers across borders, especially in the for the sake of this conversation within especially within Africa. These aspects are critical in protecting data privacy while facilitating technological advancement. Then what about the enforcement mechanisms? Regulations must be backed by robust enforcement mechanisms that hold organizations accountable for data breaches and violations. Some of this we also talked about yesterday. Effective enforcement ensures that data protection is more than just a theoretical concept. It must actually be a practical reality. Then we go into the issues of international data agreement and harmonization. And in an increasingly interconnected world, international data agreements and harmonization are very essential. These agreements facilitate data transfers across borders while ensuring that data protection standards are upheld. Harmonization, on the other hand, aligns regulations across regions, making it easier for organizations to navigate the global data landscape. We'll look at two other points very quickly. The second to the last one there will be, how do we balance data protection and technological advancement? And the central challenge here lies in striking that balance between data protection and technological advancement, where regulatory frameworks must enable innovation. We mentioned this earlier, while safeguarding data privacy, and that this balance ensures that African nations can harness the benefits of technology without compromising individual rights. Finally, we look at the area of capacity building and awareness, where regulatory compliance requires government bodies and the importance of data protection and know how to implement it. This is very fundamental to the success of regulatory frameworks. So this is a very vast panel session, regulatory frameworks for data protection, and we'll be going into the talking points now with our panelists. Again, thank you very much for staying with us so far. And my first talking point for this panel session actually looks at the area of the significance of these data protection regulations. And the question goes there. It said, why are data protection regulations essential in safeguarding individuals' data privacy? And how do they contribute to the technological advancements in African nations? Without any particular order, I think for this one, let me ask Mr. Razak Adiribigbe to contribute to this. Again, I'll take the question. We're looking at the significance of data protection regulations. We're saying, why are data protection regulations essential in safeguarding individuals' data privacy? And how do they contribute to technological advancement in African nations? Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Once again, I just want to thank the organizers for bringing this up. When we talk about data protection and the essential why we should, why we have data protection today, we've had days, in what's it called, in this fair, when I say Nigeria or Africa, where, we had gone through the different, revolution of the industrial, but we are in the age of the IT, as in information technology, where we will now need to do more working with data rather than, the days of the industrial days. So at this stage where we are, we now need to do more where data is now becoming very essential. And at the point, there's now a cause for the usage. Where we have the problem mostly has been when we use this data irresponsibly. And this had led to the call for data protection. You agree with me that the common one you've seen or you could talk about is when you find your data where it's not ought to be, or where suddenly your name comes up somewhere or your identity comes up somewhere where it shouldn't be. You curious, the next thing you want to ask is, so how did you get this data? And again, why would you have done this, without my knowledge, without my consent? So all these questions, that you want to think of, led to the legislation, or will I say, the promotion of the regulation that gave birth, to data protection. I think the common one you want to talk of, I want to talk about, that made this data protection become something essential, important, is the issue of what's it called? I think it was the Facebook issue where data is being generated, that of the third party in this case. You're generating a data that is not of the data subject, but those related data subjects, and you're using it, being manipulated to get some form of results. This led to so many trials and cases that gave back to the GDPR. From the GDPR, yes, there are laws that are being there for data protection or privacy before, but the emergence of the GDPR now gave the whole what's it called, the loudness about why it is essential and why people should take cognizance. Now again, when we look at what the legislation had done. Of course, it has, brought about some level of ethical, responsible use of this data. At this point, people, or will I say entities, collect your data, and they're telling you reasons why this data is being collected. They're telling you what it will be used for. And again, when it is done otherwise, you can, you have your own right as a data subject to say, oh, I want, this process to be stopped, or you want this to be withdrawn, or you want this, not to process, or you want it, the data should be forgotten. So all this, speak around, the use, or will I say the contribution when it comes to the legislation. The top question, sorry, I know is about 3 parts, right?
Okay, 2 actually. The first one you've addressed, why regulations are essential for safeguarding the data privacy, and of course, how these regulations contribute to technological development. Okay,
so data protection essentially is about putting the system structures, the technology, process to ensure that this data is being secured. It's on the other hand to say, for the data subjects, this is supposed to be the data privacy concern. So how do we ensure that this data collected is properly protected, from all these form of misuse, let me put it that way, or will I say unethical use? So basically, this is where this leads us to. So when you look at it to date, there's so much we're putting into this. Likewise, the cybersecurity. The common one you would see, this is common to us here in Nigeria, let me put it that way, is to get a call from someone to say, so somebody had taken a loan, or probably then, because you're related, your friend, your family, and at this point, they start harassing you. This, of course, would always come as a rude shock to anyone who has ever experienced this. And you sound like, oh, so how do I come into this? Or at what point, at what level, did I get to this stage? And again, so how did you get my data? So a lot, when it comes to this, yes, we know a lot of fintech development in terms of
Can I jump in and add to what Razak is saying because of time? Okay. Sorry, okay. Razak, apologies for butting in.
All right.
Right.
All right.
So yeah, well done. That's a very good one. But let me peel this onion layer by layer. Let me begin by saying that the regulatory framework for data protection in Africa varies significantly across the continent, as different countries have developed their own regulations and laws. However, there have been a movement towards harmonizing data protection legislation to some degree. And that, I think, is inspired by the international standards, such as the EU GDPR. But within the African context, the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data, which is often referred to as the Malabo Convention, was aimed to establish a common framework for cybersecurity and data protection across Africa. And the whole idea of that is to encourage member states to adopt laws and regulations that respect individuals' right to privacy and personal data protection. I could go on and on about the regulation, about the Regional Economic Committee, the REC, which is within the ECOWAS. But because of time, I will not waste too much time on that. I will jump right straight through to the other part of the question, which was looking at the what's it called, about innovation, and the how innovation could actually encourage enforcement and all sort of stuff. So regulations really can embrace innovation and enforcement by achieving a balance between protecting consumer rights and fostering an environment where new technologies such as AI, ML, and other business models can thrive. Now, the question is, how will regulators work towards that? First of all, the regulators in each of the African states can create what we call a flexible framework. That flexible framework will be, looking at the principle based. It will be principle based rather than prescriptive. Some of the current regulations are very prescriptive. They need to be allowing for adaptability. And as the technology evolves around, AI and other new tech coming out. Also, a lot of the regulators need to implement what we call a sandbox environment, where businesses can test innovative products under regulatory supervision without incurring all the normal regulatory consequences. Also, they need to focus on outcomes. What do I mean by that? Regulators ought to focus on desired outcomes, e.g. privacy protection, data security, and new laws, rather than specific compliance processes, which allow for innovative approaches to achieving these outcomes. The third point I'd like to raise is the regular updates and reviews. You'll notice that once all these data protection laws or acts or whatever they call it are written, they don't review them, they just leave them there. I think they ought to regularly update the regulatory framework or frameworks to keep pace with technological advancement, and that is key. A lot of them don't do that. They need to continuously review, the framework, the regulatory frameworks to keep pace with what? With technological advancement. So that periodic review of regulations can help identify outdated provisions and ensure they remain effective and relevant. Also, they need to encourage what I call the self-regulation, meaning promoting industry self-regulation can encourage the development of best practices that are both innovative and in compliance with overarching regulatory goals. Also, they need to engage stakeholders. Just NDPB or any of the regulators sitting down in Abuja, wherever they see it and writing stuff without engaging stakeholders will not really, it will amount to prescriptive. So involving a range of stakeholders, including technologists, not just civil servants as they tend to do, including technologists, businesses, and civil society in the regulatory processes to ensure a variety of perspectives, that will really help. And also hosting public consultations. They tend to do that very well in Nigeria, but the outcome of that is usually not well defined. So hosting public consultation to gather input on new technologies and potential regulatory approaches. And lastly, because of time, providing clear guidance and resources. That is key. Providing clear guidelines, coming up with SOPs, case studies, examples of compliance to help businesses understand regulatory expectations rather than a prescriptive approach, and also offering resources and tools to support compliance, such as templates or checklists for new businesses. When you go onto the NDPB website, you try and download a template. A lot of them don't have templates for what they're asking you to do. Also, lastly, because of time, it must be a risk-based approach. Implementing a risk-based approach to regulation and enforcement ensures that resources, and I mean resources, are focused on areas of highest risk, not just throwing resources at low, medium, but areas of highest risk, encouraging innovation in areas that are less critical from a regulatory standpoint. And also, they must be aware of what I call the global harmonization, working towards international regulatory harmonization that could reduce barriers for innovators and businesses operating across the borders. So I'll leave you there. I could go on and on, but I'll leave you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that insightful intervention, Mr. Adeniran. Of course, Mr. Aderibigbe. So earlier, I see a hand there from Melody. Okay, Ms. Malusi, please, maybe you want to quickly give us your intervention at this point.
Okay, thank you so much, Olubenga. I hope I have pronounced it well. So, I have thank you to also Razak and the previous speaker. Apologies, your name has slipped my mind, but that is very insightful. And to add on that, one thing that is important to note is that all these regulatory frameworks, the underlying motivation or the motivation behind all these frameworks relies on the principles of data privacy. And these principles include transparency, fairness, we have accountability, we have I've said transparency, fairness, accountability, just a minute, yes, and safety. So in line with this, in line with the principles that have been data privacy that have been clearly stipulated in the GDPR, then we can then come up with policies that indeed tick these boxes, or rather tick these principles that have been laid down. And sometimes, or some, it is not easy to balance the principles, or rather to have innovations that strike the balance between different principles, but with more, as we go by, regulators are finding more ways on how to even localize the frameworks, because you can find that the use cases in businesses or organizations handling data in Africa are different from those in the Western countries. So with time, we've seen tremendous efforts, such as the African Union, the policies, or rather the act that they came with in regarding ethical AI. So you see, it promotes, yes, it supports innovation, but at the end of the day, if you're using data to promote innovation, then we have to protect the data subjects. So in line with that, I just want to talk about how these regulatory frameworks can strike a balance between protecting data privacy and fostering innovation. So first of all, since data sits in the systems, we have to ensure that it follows the CIA triad. So what is this CIA triad? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So for confidentiality, we have to put systems in place to ensure that only those who are authorized to access the data can access the data at any particular time. For integrity and for confidentiality, what we can do is label the data that is to be accessed. For integrity, we can have checksums. This is to ensure that data is as is and is not contaminated in any way. And availability, the legitimate users of the systems, or only those who are authorized to access data at any particular point, are able to. So we can put in place measures like having anti-DDoS or distributed denial of service that will ensure that systems are up and running and available to users anytime. And then it is also important to note that AI is, I usually see AI as, you see how when we are standing, you're standing in front and I'm standing at the back, and we have number 6 and number 9. So for one person, you'll see it as number 6, the other person, you'll see it as number 9. What is that supposed to mean? Either those who see it as a bad thing, but honestly, AI has AI has really done tremendous work, or rather advancements in all sectors, be it healthcare, be it manufacturing, be it telecommunications. So industries are really relying on AI. For instance, in cybersecurity, we use phishing now. Phishing of emails relies heavily on AI. For computer vision, that is AI. So I have seen organizations and countries come up with policies that protect pre-trained models, post-trained models, and in-trained models. But what do I mean by that? For you to train a model, you have to have data sets. And these data sets are basically, for instance, if for facial recognition, I need people's faces so that I can train this machine that this is a face. So the challenge that came with that is, so under purpose limitation and data minimization, okay, after you have trained the machine, what next? What are you going to do with that data? Are you going to dispose it? So you see, again, as much as, yes, we want biometrics or rather facial recognition, we also have to go back and ask ourselves, this data that I'm collecting that I have collected from this number of people, how am I going to protect it and not use it for malicious gains? Another, yes, apart from the facial recognitions, you can also find people become afraid of giving out their data because they really don't know what you're going to do with them. So we really also, in the aspect of transparency, we need to explain to those that you are collecting data from, I am going to use your data for A, B, C, D. And I have seen one issue that we Africans have. I don't know why Africans, but we always have a silent objective. So we can tell someone, no, I'm just collecting your data for ABCD, but really you have another silent objective that you do not want to say. So maybe you want to collect their data for marketing purposes, but you do not want to explicitly say that I will be collecting your data for marketing purposes. So with the upcoming advancements and also to note, there is no one shoe fits all framework, because business environments are different, dynamics are different, and the environments are different. What influence the environments are different. So we cannot also just impose a certain framework on a particular geographic position. We must be cognizant of the fact that different geographical locations have different needs, and therefore look for ways on how to have the different frameworks well suited to the different markets. I think, yes, that's my take on balancing privacy and innovation. I can now, back to you, Olibenga.
All right, thank you so much for that, Melody. I love the way we've started. Interestingly, your intervention has actually taken us a bit into the second part of the talking points. But it's fine. I see a hand. Cynthia is raising a hand.
Sorry, Olibenga. If
yes.
you don't mind, since Yemi intends to leave,
drop out.
In a bit, yeah. Hi, Yemi. Just some a couple of thoughts I wanted to run by you. Right, with regards to your intervention to Razak's earlier response, right, and it comes from, we're looking at the framework, right, for data protection regulation, right, and in legal development theory, right, we do have, right, the concepts of policy, law, right, and administration, right. While policy in itself is very aspirational. Essentially, it's a statement as to what is to be achieved in a particular space or in a particular subject. So in data protection, we should, as a continent, have our data protection policy, right? Then you have law. And the question really is, I think it's in the legal theory space or in the law space, right, that we should really dwell more on principles. The laws set the principles. It sets the parameters, right? You should not expect the law to be prescriptive. Of course, the process of amendation of the law, amendment of the law, it has to go to the National Assembly or State House of Assembly or municipal assemblies, as whatever the case would be. So inherently, it should be a bit stoic, right? Principles-based in nature. But I think administration should be prescriptive. Administration should be flexible. Administration should provide guidance. It should be there for the market to give the market the day-to-day guidance as to what needs to be done. Case in point, you're in the UK, you're high CEO in the UK. The amount of resources that comes from that office, the amount of intervention into what happens to the market that comes from that office gives a lot of certainty, right? Engages practitioners, of course, creates work for you and I, because daily we have to update ourselves as to what the regulators are thinking. And of course, the regulators, that's the administrators here, are not going to do anything without intervening or speaking to you and I as practitioners. So I'm basically taking you back to your proposition that, look, regulation should not really be that prescriptive. I think at the level of administration, we need more of prescription. We need more of guidance. We need more of leadership, right? Let's leave the principles to the law. But we need a very active and engaging administration system, i.e. regulator. In our case now, we have the NDPDC. We need them providing toolkits. We need them providing guidance in terms of, administration or usage of new technologies. I wanted to ask whether you, agree with me. And I throw this particularly because of Razak's Razak.
So Yemi just left. He left the call earlier, but
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, this is for everyone's consumption.
Because of Razak's industry, Razak is in the credit administration industry. They have a law. I mean, in Nigeria, they have a 2017 law on credit administration, right? Which seeks to, interestingly, it has some very copious provisions on data protection. Actual fact, it precedes even the NDPR in itself. It precedes a lot of what we currently have today, right? But the challenge there is regulation. There is nobody actively engaging it. So perhaps if anybody really wants to intervene, that's perhaps where I differ from him. Now that he's not here, I think I can throw a lot more shades. Right? He's not here. Since he doesn't have the right of response. I think regulators need to be more engaging. We need them on the field. They shouldn't just sit in their offices and collect fat salaries. They need to lead the market. The second question for Yemi is on the SROs. He mentioned the self-regulating organization. And I'm just trying to rack my head around how can we have SROs, right, in the data protection space. Case in point, right? The Nigerian Stock Exchange is an SRO, it's a self-regulating organization that regulates its members and all of that. But then in data security and data protection, I mean, he mentioned it, but then I've been trying to wrap my head around it. I really can't come up with a pristine example of how we can have an SRO sort of arrangement in data protection. So those are my two interventions. Thanks a lot, GB.
Thank you very much, Bidemi, for that. Okay, Cynthia has had a hand for a while now. So Cynthia, maybe you want to react to the last point from Bidi, and of course, also give us what you intended to say as well much earlier. Probably it's around the same thing. Please, so you have the floor, Cynthia. Thank you so much. And again, for the sake of our audience, please, we'll be very grateful if we could, I mean, panelists, that is, if we could turn on our videos, so it just makes it a bit more relatable for our audience. They want to see our faces, I mean, our mannerisms as we are, you know, giving our interventions in this panel. Thank you so much. Cynthia, please, you may proceed.
Well, actually, I never had the intention of turning on my video up to the point you requested. So
thank you so much for indulging us.
Well, so I think this is a very heated conversation, and I like the way this is going. Like, it's getting exciting, especially for us who are data protection managers and officers and all that. So I'd just like to maybe respond to the first question, which was with regards to significance of the data protection regulations. And one, we understand that data protection rights are not, it's not rocket science, they are human rights. That's the first thing we need to understand before we go into the nitty-gritties of how do we get institutions to comply, how do we get guidance from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. Data protection is about me and you, us, every day. We are the same people who transact. We are the same people who walk into hospitals and give our data. So the first thing we would be thinking of is, do we really understand what digital rights are? And I really like making reference to some of the principles in law and rules, because you understand that one, there's an international principle known as the do no harm principle. And that's why we have this data protection regulation, that in as much as entities are trying to automate, innovate, and do all that, for us to use AI systems and machine learning, as Melody stated earlier, we need personal data to train the systems. So how are we going to strike the balance between making sure that these systems are accurate and the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation? So it's something that it's a thin line, but at the same time, we need to comply as institutions that use innovative technologies. The second aspect, going back to the human right aspect, when we watch movies, we hear police officers telling people, you have the right to remain silent. Those are Miranda rights for a criminal offender. It is the same way an individual, you have digital Miranda rights, that as a data subject, you have a right to access your data, to request, to rectify. So these principles are majorly founded on human rights. The data subject rights, the laws are majorly, they are creations of constitutional requirements in law, and you cannot depart from that. And that's why one of the panelists stated that that's why we have the African Union Convention, which is trying to create an environment where we can all collaborate in terms of compliance, and where do we draw the line between human rights principles, ethical use of personal data, and the interest of tech companies, and also, of course, corporate companies. So looking at it from that perspective, somebody mentioned something to do with Facebook, and it took me to, I was reading a book somewhere, and it was stating that most of these companies will put profits before people. But then how do we make them comply with human rights principles on data protection? And this is where we are telling them it should be people before profit. Look at their rights. Why do we have data protection impact assessments? Is to assess the risks that are presented to the people. Yeah, the users, the end user in mind. So I wouldn't want to belabor the point. It has been said, much has been said, and we'll continue having this conversation. But I'd like to cede the floor back to you, Ben.
Thank you so much for that intervention, Cynthia. I took a very strong point there. People before profits, not profits before people. I mean, as I say, it's easier said than done, but then I believe it's actually, it's doable. It's just a question of the willpower we put in place as regulators, and of course, as data controllers, and of course, as data subjects as well. So that takes me, I think I saw a hand there. So meanwhile, for our audience, please, if you have any questions, you could just put them in the comment section. I saw a hand from Fred. I think, let me confirm that name again. So maybe we could just quickly take that. I noticed your hand has been up for a while. If you still want to quickly take your question, I don't know if it's a question or a contribution. Fred Ogundo Sondo, please. You're permitted to talk.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Yes, good afternoon. It's 12:01 here now. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I just wanted to lend a voice to what Melody said earlier on. She spoke on the fact that there are certain sensitive data that should be protected by organizations. You know, I just wanted to lend a voice to that because unlike just delivering your PIN or password, which you can change to someone, your biometric data cannot be changed and it cannot be reset. So there is an emphasis to be laid on that particular point, that there should be a strict requirement for companies or for organizations who take such sensitive data to ensure that they are protected with the highest level of security and not let out there to be tampered with by malicious persons or by persons who have ulterior motives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you very, very spot on, spot on. So that takes us into the other parts, the second talking point there. I mean, earlier on, Melody already provided some insights into this, but then we could use additional insights as well. Talking about balancing privacy and innovation, can you give us examples of how regulatory frameworks strike a balance between protecting data privacy and fostering technological advancements? Maybe I want to start with Bidemi this time around on this point. Talking about balancing privacy and innovation, maybe just taking it away from where Melody had left it earlier on.
All right, thanks, GB. I guess we'll still go back to regulation since that's what the focus of the session really is. I think regulation plays a vital role, right, between balancing privacy and innovation. The way our laws is currently skewed is that, look, if you're going to be developing any new technology, typically, right, and you're going to be perhaps using personal data in the process of the development of that new technology, such personal data that is going to be, employed for that purpose under Nigerian law is regarded as sensitive. So basically, or rather, it's regarded rather that you are you are undertaking what you call an high-risk processing, rather not sensitive. So processing sensitive personal data under our law is considered as high-risk processing, which requires that you undertake a DPIA and all of that, a data protection impact assessment and all of that. Likewise, too, right, under what we consider as high-risk processing under Nigerian law, if you are going to be developing new technologies, and then that new technology in itself is going to be consuming personal data or it's going to be processing personal data, then you it's considered high risk. And under our laws have now changed, right? What we used to have, and perhaps the rest of Africa can still learn from us again as well. I mean, we seem to be doing very great in Nigeria in the data protection space anyway. So under our law right now, a DPIA is compulsory. Prior to June 12th this year, I mean, if you're going to be doing any of that, if you're a private organization, you could as well decide whether you undertake a DPIA or not. I mean, it's left to your it's left to your business rules, your mandatory business rules, as to whether you undertake a DPIA. But that has now changed. If you're going to be undertaking any sort of high risk processing, and like I said again, if you're going to be using new technologies for the processing, which speaks to innovation for the processing of personal data, you must undertake a DPIA. And you just don't stop by undertaking a DPIA. You must report to, particularly when, after the conduct of your DPIA, it is revealed that that indeed there is high risk to personal data, right? You must report to the regulator. In our case, that is the NDPC, as to the outcome of that DPIA. And then the NDPC can, what the law says that you must consult the NDPC, which means that the NDPC must have a feedback to you and all of that. So I think, given what we have done with our NDPA, which is nascent, again, took effect June 12, 2023 this year, I think we seem to have covered that very delicate balance between privacy and innovation by saying, look, yes, you must. We're not saying do not innovate, but to the extent that your innovation will be consuming personal data, this is high risk. You undertake a DPIA. Let us know if the outcome of your DPIA shows that indeed it is high risk. And I think it's something that we should export to the rest of Africa. I think it's a novel provision. In actual fact, again, it provides work for we practitioners. More money for practitioners, Melody, Cynthia, and the rest of us, right? So I think it's something that should be taken out of the conclave from Nigeria and exported to the rest of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bidemi. Okay, Cynthia, you have a hand. So in addition to what you're going to your intervention, if you could also help us highlight some of this challenge, because we believe that in the process of achieving this balance, of course, there'll be a lot of challenges and dilemmas. So if you perhaps could also give us a bit of insight into some of those challenges and dilemmas that regulators and organizations can face while trying to achieve this equilibrium, especially when you look at the tension between security and innovation in this case. So you have the floor, Cynthia. Thank you.
Well, I'm not so certain if I'll answer your last question on security and innovation, because that requires a technical mind. I'm going to speak from a legal mind and what we are able to do. And just to buttress the position where, what's his name? Our previous speaker, I just forgot his name.
That's
Yes, David, and I'd say that he has talked of data protection impact assessments. This is a statutory requirement as well for us here in Kenya. And this is a reporting requirement as well. Whether we are onboarding or using new technologies, we must conduct a data protection impact assessment. Maybe we could be asking ourselves, why are we doing a DPIA? It's because it's the only point where we will be able to get to understand what risks will be presented to the data subjects in case this system does not work, or in case there are any vulnerabilities in the system, because they are the people we need to have in mind. And apart from that regulatory requirement, how do we also still balance privacy and innovation? And maybe this will answer a bit of your question on data security and innovation. We go back to our principles on data protection, and they are founded on the principle of privacy by design, which are the 8 data protection principles. So going back to it, what does it say about the technologies we are going to use? When you're designing a system, a software, an application, then innovators must have these principles in mind, that we have to adhere to privacy concerns. What Melody stated earlier, that confidentiality, integrity, availability, of course, you have the principle of data minimization. How much will this system process? And how much is enough for this system? And how much is too much for this system? Because this is where we keep attending forums and asking ourselves, do you know who you are? Or your phone knows you better than you know yourself? So sometimes you find that we have so much information we are feeding into the applications we download each and every day. They have our fingerprints, our facial recognition. These are sensitive data about our families, our close relations. Like when I look at my phone, there's a part where it has mapped, of course, the image of my kids, maybe my son, my spouse, and you're like, okay, why would it do this? Because it's like we are training a system based on the data and the photos we take without us knowing. Transparency, accountability. So do this system meet these requirements? Because most of the innovators will just come up with innovations to serve a business purpose. But with these innovations, serve a human right purpose in terms of human autonomy. Are we able to still maintain our human autonomy while using the application? So privacy by design is something that innovators need to actually be trained on. And this takes us to design thinking. We have the end in mind because we always say the end justifies the means. So as we do this, then before you develop a system, come up with a rough idea or a design of something and say, okay, at the end of this product, this is what we call the software development lifecycle. I need to ensure there's data security. I need to ensure there's privacy. So what am I supposed to do at the back end as a developer? So that at the end of the day, when I present this application, I have the user in mind and the business in mind at the same time. So we need to prioritize design thinking. And the authorities have the responsibility of bringing together these different stakeholders, because while we can decide and discuss all this, if the tech guys will just decide to, okay, it's our work to come up with tech, the systems, the application, but then do we have everyone on the table, or are we leaving the technical community outside? Are we leaving the legal, the policy makers? So it is a collaborative process for us to achieve the balance between privacy and innovation. Yeah, I'll cease there.
Thank you so much. Okay, and I guess somebody's confirming, corroborating your point there in the comment section. Alexander Amago. So a key point from the technical perspective of privacy is the privacy by design. All right, thank you very much, Cynthia. I think Melody is raising it, and I was going to call Razak to quickly provide an intervention on the area of how you balance privacy and innovation. We especially focusing on the challenges that we might expect to encounter there. But maybe we should take yours first, or Razak, you want to go first?
You can take ours first. It's okay.
Okay, fine. Okay, let's take Melody first then. All right, Melody, please proceed. So Razak, you go next. Although Melody, I was still coming back to you anyway on the next point, which was going to be focused around the areas of data minimization and purpose limitation. But let's go then.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. You are really dropping those nuggets. Thank you so much. It's really eye-opening and enlightening. To also add on the challenges that I have seen or I have had across the market regarding the policies. So one, it is very difficult to measure the law and what are these? Because for the data protection officers who are from the legal side, they might not have much visibility or know-how on how data can be protected from the technical side. And then also those in the technical space again have limited knowledge on the legal side. So now getting a data protection officer who merges the two, and even getting organizations or having organizations that have clearly outlined processes and policies on how to marry the two is really a challenge. And I have seen, because if you want to be more legal, then IT suffer. If you want to be more technical, then sometimes there are so many gaps in the legal space. So that is one challenge that I have identified in marrying the two. Another challenge is, as I said before, in the principles of data privacy, there are some trade-offs that are unacknowledged, because you might find, for instance, banking. The banks have products that they might want to sell to you. So they will use your data to do marketing. They're marketing some of the products that they have. But then when you are giving that data, did you really consent to, yes, you can send me products, you can send me marketing messages or marketing emails on some of the products that you have. So there are some unacknowledged trade-offs in the, because again, now that again ties to transparency. Were you transparent enough when you were asking me for my details? And if, for instance, there was one client who told me of that issue, and upon diving deep into the issue, so we went to the bank and did all that. So the other option was, we got to know, or rather, there are also limitations of the data subject. So one limitation in that instance of the customer receiving marketing emails was, if you do not want them, if you want to opt out, then that means you cannot also have an account with us, because having an account with us then means we will automatically send those marketing emails. So there's having that, or rather striking that balance and acknowledging indeed that there are trade-offs, and being honest and open to your customers is also something, a gap, or rather a challenge that I have seen in the framework. And then there's also insufficient enforcement. It is just recently in Kenya that we've seen organizations being fined on leaking data or posting students' photos on their websites without the parents' consent, because children do not really know what consent is. So we really have much to do in terms of bridging the gap on really enforcing much on the whole data protection thing and the whole data privacy thing. And then we also do not have practical means of removing data, because one of my rights as a data subject is I have the right to dictate how my data should be handled, in the sense that I have the right to tell an organization, no, you know what, kindly erase or just destroy all information you have of me. So we do not really have practical ways of doing that, because again, it goes back to, do these organizations have proper ways of disposing people's data? Yes, so in challenges, that is what I can talk about, the gaps that I have seen. And then also coming to some of the cyber, now from the technical bit, some of the cyber security gaps that I have also seen. We had a breach in 2020 for one of it's a cybersecurity company known as SolarWinds. So SolarWinds, the turnaround, okay, so there's something called 0 day. 0 day is when a vulnerability has been identified. So sometimes the time to do the resolution can take up to 90 days. So that means maybe patching, yes, more so patching the vulnerabilities that have been identified. But then you see now for GDPR, it states as soon as you identify a vulnerability, make sure you patch it immediately. So really, it's really hard to get that balance, because again, if you want it to be patched immediately, then that costs come in, so many things are in consideration. So again, streamlining, we really have a lot to do in streamlining, both from the cybersecurity perspective and from the legal perspective. And yes, that is my input. Let me take it back to you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just to add a bit to what you said earlier on, especially in terms of balancing that the technical side and the legal side. I know many lawyers these days now begin to get more tech savvy. We have a couple of organizations. I know about two in Nigeria currently that basically call themselves tech lawyers, right? Trying to segue into that space, into the tech space, and see how they could combine the legal and technological aspects. And it's actually a very, very important thing at this point, just to create that balance between it, just to add to that point you made earlier on. Razak, please, let's have your thoughts, please.
Okay, so thanks for this. I think for me, when we look at the data privacy and also the innovation challenge, some of the challenge, number one, I would refer to the regulators, and when it comes to that, that's the reality between the policy and also what is in practice. At times, what you see is whatever it is that is, that is documented as a policy might not be really feasible for all the industry or all the players in this regards. We have different levels of data categorization, and this applies to different organizations. So, of course, this should take different dimensions when we're taking these institutions one at a time. I still see this from the regulatory perspective to be a situation where they still want to take everyone as the same when they are approaching them. So when they make these policies, they don't get to be very specific, on what the applicability will look like. Another thing I want to talk about is the rapid pace of technology. Yes, you design something today and suddenly somewhere there's another technology that is, moving ahead of that. You could talk about this when it comes to the likes of deploying of APIs. And you see this where you designed something that could do 1, 2, 3, and somebody had designed something that could do 7, 8, 9. How do you keep the pace? So in order to do this again, there's a need to get ahead of the task, the game, and also holding privacy and technology, as priority. Another thing is, the one that is sweeping everywhere, which is the AI. The artificial intelligence is something that is very disruptive in nature. As we speak, unfortunately, I don't think Africa is there yet when it comes to how we're coming to play in this space. Of course, other region are tried, putting up something, to ensure that they are able to come in from the development, from the deployment, and also the usage. But again, how do we get there? I think by now we're supposed to have the council and the commission rather, having maybe a team, a board, where they are already sitting to see how they come to play in this space. But of course, this is still going to give us this, it's still a challenge to Africa, how we tend to operate in the space, managing privacy and all. Privacy. And there's always a concern, yes, looking at the kind of technology you need to deploy to make things work. It gets to a stage where, you want to look at it and say, look, there's need to assess my cost benefits. So if, the cost is far, ahead of my benefit, of course, why would I deploy this? And so you tend to know how to manage the risk eventually. So again, this boils down to what the privacy concern or the privacy risk for the data subject at this point in time. So these are my contribution in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Very insightful, Razak. Thank you. I'm seeing a comment now from Ambassador Joy Anago. I'll just read out very quickly. Says a zero-day attack is an attack that exploits a previously unknown hardware, firmware, or software vulnerability, and the use of a zero-day exploit to cause damage to or steal data from a system affected by a vulnerability. Thus, data protection should be implemented. Also, public awareness of such exploits. All right, thank you very much for this. I don't know if any of our panelists wants to react to this at all. I mean, it's just a contribution, basically. Of course, I think public awareness should definitely be on top. I mean, it should be top-notch, especially in areas of these new generations of cyber attacks and criminal tendencies that keep happening every day, especially in this, the AIs and the data protection space. All right, I'll just go right away into the next point, which talks about data minimization and purpose limitation. And I'll take this back to, I think I want to start with Bidemi this time again. Let's talk about the principles, like how do principles like data minimization and purpose limitation within regulatory frameworks contribute to data and responsible data use? Then, of course, what are the possible impacts of these principles on data privacy and innovation, including how they help prevent data misuse? So I want to take all our points as much as possible, but let's start with Bidemi. Because of our time, we can just keep this to 2 minutes and 2 minutes maximum, so we can get enough interventions from everyone. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, I think I'll do it in less than a minute. I mean,
great.
We have that codified in Nigeria, and then of course it's expected that the regulators, all right, particularly from the data protection compliance audits that are filed annually, I mean, they do review them, would ensure that the categories of data that is being kept at least is minimized as much as possible. So in other words, they review whatever organizations say that they're actually keeping, and then at least report back on those audit reports to say, okay, we've reviewed what you are keeping. We think that in accordance with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, right, that we think you should keep, you really do not need this to achieve this particular purpose or not. But I dare say that until regulators, right, start coming back with those recommendations, having reviewed the audit reports in themselves, I think this almost much of this conversation will largely remain in the realms of theory, right? It's very, very far apart from praxis. We need more practicality, right, in data protection. We really need to bring it from that esoteric realm it typically currently still sits, you know, that very abstract realm, and bring it into the mundane and bring it into core reality. And again, only regulators really will be able to achieve this. Yemi is not back to answer my question on the self-regulating organization, because in the absence of regulation, sometimes self-regulating organizations are actually able to enforce some form of regulation. But then again, the jury is still out on that. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Bidemi. Okay, so Melody, let's have you. Data minimization and purpose limitation. How does this contribute to responsible data use? And how can they help prevent data misuse? The impact of these principles.
Okay, so first we need to understand what data minimization is. And so for data minimization, if, for instance, you want to collect information about Melody, or if let me give you an example. Most of our buildings here in Kenya, when you're a visitor or a guest, they want to collect your name. They want to collect your name, your phone number, your ID number, which is our national identification number. They want you to sign. Apologies. If you dare question, why do you want my phone number? Why do you want my ID number? Why do you want, because I can give you my name and sign, or I can give. But if you try and question, they become so defensive, of which we understand they're just collecting orders, or rather they also don't want to be termed as insubordinate or defying the orders from their bosses. But data minimization, because you see, if you have my national ID number, you have my phone number, you can easily go and, so okay, in Kenya, for you to get a new phone number, you have to have an ID number. So you see, it becomes very easy for malicious people to go and buy this data from the guards, and they go open other phone numbers using my identity, using my national ID, which in turn will, in case of anything, I'll be the one who will be tracked down. So again, we really need to ask ourselves when collecting data, do we really need this data? And for what purpose do we really need this data? Can we do without this data? If we do not have this subset of data, are we not going to function? Are we not going to meet our objective? Are we not going to meet our purpose? So yes, I think my 2 minutes are up. That is my contribution for data minimization and purpose limitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very succinct. I don't know if Razak or Cynthia wants to throw any more light on this. If not, we actually have a question on the Q&A now. Maybe I will just take that. Cynthia, any intervention?
Okay.
So
okay, yeah,
just to.
Okay.
Okay. Let me go first. Thank you. Sorry about that. Well, we might be having some network interruption because it's raining. So yeah, it's raining in Nairobi. Well, so to just add on what the previous speakers and panelists have said, when we're looking at the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, the first thing that should cross your mind is, what is your business? Yeah, because this must align with business. I wouldn't want to walk into a bank and have been asked for my blood group. It does not serve the purpose in a financial institution, right? The same applies. I cannot go to a school and I'm being asked to provide maybe some weird sets of data. So first we have to identify the business purpose. We are in the financial service industry. Then what do we need to know about you? Does it have the purpose? So there are normally two approaches to this, and I call them the test. One is the objectivity test, and two is the necessity test. So if we have the necessity test, then it informs what business we are doing. Is it necessary for this processing activity? Yes. So we might need to use tick boxes and ask some questions that are very significant before we process a class of data. If in a, let's say I can use an example of a financial institution, because we are trying to curb something like identity theft, then we might have to have another set of data that cannot be regenerated like biometric data. There's no day somebody will walk into a financial institution with my fingerprint or my iris. It has to be me. Yeah. So how do you authenticate? And until we get that necessity that we really need this to solve this problem, then we will need this data. But if you don't need this at this point, then it's not important. And what does it mean if we overprocess personal data? It means there's an extra cost of storage. And that's why we are now moving to the clouds. Probably that's why it's raining. You know, and storage is expensive. So having that in mind, then we have to go back to the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to cede the floor back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Yes, okay, Razak, you wanted to say something? Still want to go ahead?
Yeah, just going to be a short one, like I want to say. I think when we come to the contribution of data minimization and purpose minimization, as regards to data protection, the essence is basically, yes, for data subjects to be enlightened and also to be empowered. So you are approaching an institution or an entity and they are asking for some questions. You should have the right to say, do you need this and what would you use this for? I've had this most essentially. I could relate when I go to hotels and they're asking questions around some other thing. And I say, look, what you need is this. I don't think you need this because I don't know what you're using this for. And in the process where they can't explain, of course, they have to relax those requirements, you know, for me to go ahead. So I think that is one. And two is also to create some kind of operating space, you know, for any entity or data collector or processor. So you're collecting the data as a data controller and they're looking at it and say, okay, this is what you should get. And anything outside that, of course, it's out of space. So you should operate within what you should need and what is necessary for the processing or your operation. Again, also, the whole thing is meant to bring about responsible use. So in as much as you're collecting what is applicable to you, it's expected that you also use this data responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Razak. So there's a question on the comment section. Very quickly, let me read it. Cynthia also has to leave us in about 5 minutes. There's an impromptu meeting she has to join. So maybe you want to take this before you go, Cynthia. My question goes on the effectiveness of our data protection laws and regulations on data processors or controllers outside jurisdiction, but processing data of data subjects within jurisdiction. How do we ensure compliance and accountability of these data processors, even though there are laws already, or how do we implement compliance of these laws against them?
Oh, well, so you've thrown me under the bus just when I'm about to leave. But I'm happy to take the question.
Count from you before you go.
All right, no problem. And I think the question is, how do we ensure compliance by data being processed maybe by entities outside our jurisdictions? So there are different laws and countries that have come up with, what do I say? They are normally called the standard contractual clauses which apply mostly in the EU. There was the EU-US Privacy Shield. That is how they did when they had the Schrems 2 case. But in Africa, there are countries that have published, there's a name I'm trying to recall, it's really skipped my mind, adequacy. It's called an adequacy list. And I think Malawi published one sometimes back stating that these are the countries in Africa that are compliant with the data protection laws, and they have data protection laws. And if at all there is any transfer of personal data or processing that is happening in those countries, then they are deemed to be compliant based on the fact that they have legislated on data protection laws. And I'm just excited and about the Malabo Convention that recently finally came into effect. And it means all the 54 African countries will have to comply with the data protection and cybersecurity convention of the African Union, having it being ratified by the 15 countries. So it is upon how the commissioners will collaborate as well, and how we are going to engage as African countries, because sometimes you could be having a claim against another state, like maybe Facebook, but mostly they say Africa, like one Kenyan country is like a small state, and we cannot really push them to comply or to even pay for damages where there are breaches. So we need to have a regional framework. And I can use the best example as there's one recent framework that has been released by the South African countries. I think it's called the Windhoek Declaration on Ethical AI. And if we take that approach where we work as a region, if it's East Africa, then we join hands. And that is the only way we can make big tech companies accountable. But if we work as individual states, we might be fighting an unending battle. So we really need to collaboratively work together as Africa data protection regulators and give our bare minimums that this is the baseline. If you're coming to Africa to mine data to develop systems, then this is our bare minimums and you have to comply with this. So because in as much as we might be regulating and providing laws and policies, then we are regulating something that we never innovated. Yeah. So if we are not the innovators, then how do we regulate the innovation? We are chasing wins. So that is what I can say about that. And I would, yeah, really.
For that, yeah, thank you very much. I mean, quite insightful, and that will even take me to the next line of questioning. I want BDME to take this one. We're looking at international data agreement and harmonization. Of course, it's part of what you have hopped upon just now, Cynthia. We're looking at the benefits of international data agreements and regulatory harmonization in the context of data protection, and how these mechanisms can support global data transfer while upholding data privacy standards and the importance of global cooperation in data cooperation and protection. I'll still take this bit anyway, but Bidemi, you have the floor. Maybe you want to just really provide some insights into this.
Yeah, I guess Cynthia's intervention, perfectly segues into the question in itself, right? I mean, there is power in unity. I mean, as a cliche says, right? So, I mean, those international agreements, right, or collaborations are very essential for purposes of enforcement, because when we talk of regulation, a regulatory framework for data protection, I think ultimately what we're speaking to really is, enforcing the principles, enforcing the standards, really. So a handshake, right, whether sub-regionally in West Africa, for example, in our case, or in East Africa, as Melody and Cynthia would have it over there in Kenya, right? And then continentally, thanks for the Malabo Convention and other treaties and conventions that will be, that would come up, and then ultimately internationally, right? Or even, still multilaterally, across some jurisdictions and all of that, would largely work. But then, of course, international law would always, international law will always go to municipal laws. Any day. For example, in our own jurisdiction, even though we've signed international treaties and agreements, they are not enforceable in our country until they have been localized or, they have been enacted into law by our National Assembly. So, I mean, the work still comes back to the relevant jurisdiction to ensure that the belts and braces are put in place to ensure that commitments are not just made internationally, and then when it comes back home, the hard work that needs to be done to domesticate those the laws are not done on time, and then those international laws or agreements really have no force of law, I mean, within your jurisdiction, right? Whereas perhaps in the jurisdiction of your counterparty, who is more astute, right, in terms of the legislative processes, the laws already have effect there. I mean, but what is beautiful about data protection, in summary for me, really is that it's really global discourse, right? So, I mean, this almost, I mean, and it's principles based. So almost the same conversation you're going to have in Nigeria is what you're probably going to have in the United States. Almost the same conversation that you are going to have in Canada is what you're going to have in Kenya. So, so I think largely, right, there is some convergence. There is largely, I mean, a large dose of convergence, right, in this space, right? So, I mean, the only nuances or the changes really, again, perhaps goes to regulation, perhaps goes to administration. So, if you pick up our NDPA today, and then you pick up the GDPR, you're asking yourself, oh, who copied who? I mean, of course, we know. I mean, so it's the same principle. Pick up the Malabo Convention and you want to look at Kenya's data protection law. I mean, it's the same thing, but again, the bite, the real trust, right, of living to that name, data protection, right, is in the last word in itself, the protection, right, the protection, right? You got to protect the protector. The protector to be protected. I mean, the protector of the protector of the protected there, right, is really a very strong administrative machinery. So that's what that's, I think, the way I would wrap it up. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, BD. And okay, so Melody, I'll take you at this point. I don't know if you want to add anyone, maybe Melody or Razak wants to add anything to what BD said. I mean, we're looking at the time now. So I just want to take two other pointers. The first one there is about effective enforcement of regulations, then of course, consent mechanisms and transparency. I was hoping that Melody will attempt, I would attack effective enforcement of regulations. There's also a question here too. So I'll read the question out, then we'll segue into that particular talking point. So the question here is from Ariel Bunad, maybe. Says, hello, please. Is it possible to have a situation of Okay, BD raise the hand. Okay. Yeah, BD.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to, I mean, volunteer to answer Dumibi's question, but then I think I jumped the gun because you were yet to read the question. So perhaps you want to read the question.
Okay.
Or maybe I read the question for the purpose of the audience then.
That's fine. Now you could go ahead then.
All right, so the question is, hello, please, is it possible to have a situation of over-regulation in terms of cybersecurity and information security so that it becomes burdensome for tech institutions and startups to keep up with? For instance, in Nigeria, we have regulations and policies from CBN, ISMS policies, NDP, NDPR, and state laws. Is it possible that these policies become a clog to innovation? And how do we ensure that that doesn't happen? I mean, brilliant question to maybe, I must say, right? But then, for example, Razak is here now. He has a lot to contend with in his own space. I mean, he is in credit administration. They actually have a very robust law, like I said earlier, which was here even before the NDPR came into effect, right? But what you would find, and I think what is interesting, right, is the ability of the laws of a state or of a country, right, to identify, right, and identify a central regulator, right? Such that that central regulator, all questions, all conversations, right, around that particular subject goes to that central regulator. Yes, we do have data protection, I mean, under the CBN guidelines and other, which relates to the banks, right? We do have, I mean, data protection considerations right under the CBN the guidelines for credit administration, which is still being administered by the CBN in itself. Right? But then, right, all these laws preceded the new and nascent NDPC that we have in the country. So what would be expected is that the NDPC has to take the charge to ensure that all these other laws that touches on data protection one way or the other are sort of harmonized and brought under its umbrella. So you're really speaking to one regulator, you're not speaking in different places. And without one singular regulator, right, concerns that you have as it relates to SMEs and all of that, right, can really be addressed, because the sort of regulation you're going to give a bank in terms of what it needs to do in terms of the infrastructure and everything that it needs to, the minimal infrastructure it needs to have in place and all of that, is going to be different from the conversation you're going to have with an SME, right? So, but then that's because there's been institutionalization and you have that singular regulator who is responsible for that subject. So I think the institutionalization of the regulator, in our case now, the NDPC, right, is the way to go to really avoid this problem. So maybe just to make you smile, what I'm saying is that to avoid over-regulation, right, you really need to empower a regulator so that you're really not speaking to so many people, and then you have just one regulator who understands the subject matter and understands the peculiarity of the economy, understands the peculiarities of businesses, startups, and all of that, and provides tailor-made, right, tailor-made regulations for those, I mean, for the different stratas in the economy. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bidemi. And I trust that addresses your question to maybe. So again, back to you, Melody. You could take it from where Bidemi stopped if you want to. But then the question for you here is, how can these regulatory frameworks be effectively enforced to hold organizations accountable for data breaches and violations? And what is the significance of enforcement in data protection? You know, as been said earlier on, one of the challenges, I think, was Cynthia that mentioned it, was the fact that when these breaches and all these violations occur, the enforcement process is not, it's not really as effective as it should be. So basically, let's have your insights on that.
Okay, so regarding how we can effectively enforce the regulations, one is we have to ask ourselves, how aware are we with these regulations? Because we cannot enforce something that we are not aware. So how we need to train individuals, so we need to train our resources on the compliance, on the standards, on the policies, and then we can, the authorities should also be very religious in imposing these fines, because, you know, when you hear your neighbor's house is on fire, you will try as much as possible not to have yours on fire, but to at least have asbestos around your house, so that in case the fire decides to spill over, your house is fully protected. So authorities should really strive to, you know, to really follow up on cases, on complaints. They should really be up to speed. They should also do frequent trainings with organizations, because having your organization compliant can be expensive, and, you know, there are some costs that we really don't want to also impose on upcoming businesses, because that will really just completely decapitate them, because the funds they are getting, instead of them reinvesting, they're taking the funds to making sure they are compliant, making sure that they train their resources. So authorities should also strive to at least have free trainings and to be very patient with upcoming businesses and organizations, considering this is something, yes, it has been there, but this is now when emphasis is really being put on. So authorities and the regulatory bodies should be patient with businesses and with upcoming with organizations, and really hold their hand like newborns on how to be compliant, how ready are they in case of attacks and such. Yes, and all that. And then to also add on the question that Bidemi just answered. So in India, I want to give an example with India. India have really strict cross-border transfers data for the data flows. And what some of the challenges that are there is for you to send your data outside India, it has to go to the government so that the government can approve. So you can imagine how many requests are there. So again, over-regulations can be frustrating to individuals and to businesses, and it will also open room for abuse for those in the office, because also one issue that was raised with the Indians in how they have their way of, or rather the regulation is, how are we going to, so the DPO is the one who can decide what to take to the government for approval and what not to take. So again, that leaves room for abuse of power. So yes, that was to answer the over regulation, and I believe I have answered how to effectively enforce the regulations. Yeah.
Oh, my apologies, I was muted for a minute. Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Melody. And that takes me to the last question of the day. Razak, that's for you. We're looking at the effective enforcement of, consent mechanisms and transparency. Let's look at, especially because of the peculiarity of what you do at the Credit Bureau, a lot of these issues I expect will come up from time to time. So explore the role of consent mechanisms and transparency in data practices in ensuring that individuals have control over their data. And of course, how do these mechanisms enable organizations to innovate responsibly while respecting individuals' data rights?
Okay, yeah, thanks for this. It could have been a major challenge for me, for my organization in this space, but like Bidemi had said, we've been on this even before the NDPR. So it was a major thing for us to work with right from the onset, that we always get the consent. But again, one other thing we'll try to do is in the situation where we're the processor, we enforce, our data controller, to ensure that at the point of collection, they ensure that the data subject, gives the consent as required. And this gives us this reasonable, protection. Yes, when it comes to innovation, yes, this could be challenging. How do you, go back to all these data subjects to say, yes, I am processing this differently, because of this innovation? Well, that could be a different issue that we would look at and say it's challenging. But again, the new acts, are given the room under the legitimate use, so for us to say, okay, so you want to check, for example, how fraudulent can, a customer or be. So, there's the legitimate reason for doing this. So, of course, I won't stop that. But again, if you're going into the likes of marketing, that's where you're crossing the boundary for me. And at that point, if you don't have the consent, then you can deal. And I think that also falls under those things you also want to refer to as something that could be, that could show this high impact when it comes to data subjects. So that's the position where we are. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think on that note, let me see if you actually, I think if there was something else.
I think just a lighter note to Razak. Legitimate interest has now become the very good excuse, right? To process,
Exactly.
process data in the absence of other.
At least it has to be properly justified.
Yeah. But then, all right then. Just on a lighter note, really. Great.
Thank you so much for that. So on that note, I believe all the questions have been taken. Let's go again to our audience. If you have any questions, maybe we still have a few minutes. you want to make any interventions or any contributions from the audience. Of course, we have a very mature audience here. People, lawyers, tech enthusiasts, and from different disciplines, basically.
Sorry,
So
can I just quickly add something to Dumebi's question? Okay, so I think for Dumebi, yes, it's a concern that you have to juggle among so many policies or regulations or laws, that you need to comply with. But nevertheless, I think you may not need to blame this agency or these bodies, coming up with all this, because at times it's a basic. What you need to look at is these guys are giving you checklists. Not all these checklists will be applicable to your industry or your sector. So at times you need to juggle this. So you can't blame them. If you're making a law for example, the fintech, yes, that would affect fintech and also the banks and the likes. But again, come to think of it, if it's something that relates to health tech, so the part that relates to technology has to come to you. But of course, you still have another agency that is health that you need to also show compliance. So it's challenging to say you want to have everything, all in one bucket. But the fact is, government will always come up with these policies, regulations, acts every now and then, considering the demands as they emerge. AI, for example, is still there. We expect that by this time, government also have come up with something in this regards to ensure that everyone is trying to fall in line. For now, I don't think we have anything in that regard. So please, you need to work with what's available at the moment. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Razak. And again, so I don't see any questions at all from any of our audience. At this point, I guess we can call it a day. Thank you so much for all my panelists. It's been a very, very insightful session. I love the way it started. It was started with a lot of fireworks. And of course, now that we've come to the end, I would like to express my gratitude to every one of us here. Start with, of course, Mr. Razak Aderibibe, Miss Melody Malusi, Bidemi Olumide, Cynthia my apologies if I missed that up. Chepkemoy, of course, Melody. Okay, I think that's about everyone from my panel. Of course, Yemi Adeniro also, who had to step out earlier. Thank you so much for this, your interventions and for the insights from you. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to the moderator of this session itself. Oh, thank you very much, Razak. I see your comment there. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, of course, thank you to our participants too for the very interesting questions and for sticking with us all this while. At this point, I'll hand over to Amaka. Amaka, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Olugbenga. Thank you, everyone. As you rightly said, thank you for an insightful session and our participants for contributing and participating, joining in. Thank you for a successful event. Day 1 was a success. Day 2 has been a success as well. We love to host these events because it just brings insight to data protection in our world today, especially in Africa. And love to say a very big thank you again to everyone that has joined in, participated or contributed, even got knowledge from this conclave. And thank you for making the 4th African Data Security Conclave a success. And we hope to see everyone next year. Do not forget to reach out to us. We have our website, we have our emails. If you do have any problems, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to, participate, if you want to contribute, whatever field that has to do with data protection, do reach out to us. I would leave our email address and website in the chat box for anyone who needs same. Thank you so much once again, everyone. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. Bye.